Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. Today we will be covering Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 2, Episode 11, Ted. This episode aired originally December 8th, 1997, written by David Greenwalt and Joss Whedon, directed by, do you know who directed this, Courtney? It's our favorite.
Is it Seth Green?
Yes, it's Bruce Seth Green. Okay, before we get into this one, I do want to introduce you all to our guest that's joining us for this recording. We have Naj from Naj Reacts on YouTube. Welcome to
I'm so excited to be here. Listen, I was so happy to find another Buffy podcast these past few months because obviously other ones are ending. And when I found y'all podcast, I fell in love with the energy y'all bring. So you actually emailed me, was like, hey, I want you to actually join. I was like, of course, and obviously why not come for one of my favorite seasons, which is season 2 of Buffy. So I'm happy to be here.
I love that. That was going to be one of my questions that I asked you. What's your favorite season of Buffy? Because, obviously you completed your journey a couple years ago with the show and Full and Angel and all that. And now you're covering Charmed, which I'm watching along with you
Charmed
and all that good stuff.
Definitely a hassle.
So good. So good. I'm loving your reactions to that because Charmed is one of my other favorite shows. But season 2 is your favorite season of Buffy, you would say?
Yeah, between all 7, I'll say 2 and for your fighting between, depending on the day, but definitely season 2.
Season 2 is my favorite season. I wanted to ask because you said you chose Ted. I was like, why? Because you would think that nobody in this world would ever choose Ted to come through. But I love the episode, so.
I was going to say, why?
Yeah, when I first watched it, as a reactor, I remember crashing out so bad because I was like, why is nobody believing Buffy? What is going on? But then I reflecting on it, and I think this is one of crucial episodes that kind of is brought up continuously throughout the rest of the series, which is the concept of a Slayer and power, and when is it too much power to exceed, and what is the limit? Even though Buffy is a Slayer, there are certain powers that she cannot exert, such as obviously this episode was mainly with the police and when can she control, what can she control? And for us, we're well, Buffy's that's, she's right, she's always right, but to other people, when is it enough? And I think a lot of people just pass this episode by because obviously season 2 has, some campy episodes. But I feel this one, especially finishing, Buffy overall, I was this episode actually became important down the line than I expected. So I was I need to come on and actually rehash some stuff that I was actually mad about before.
She's I need to come on and psychoanalyze this episode.
Literally, though. No, I always put it in my top category. I don't know why. It stood out to me, and I'll go ahead and say it now, that this is one of the lower ranked. It's down there with I, Robot You, Jane, and The Puppet Show, and all these other episodes that are usually lower on the spectrum of grander episodes of Buffy. And I'm I never understood why. It's got such a good story, especially with everything that we get into it. And even what you just said, Xander and Willow face all that stuff with Buffy. How can she normalize what she's done in this episode and everything that she has to fight for, and understand with and about herself for it. It's just really good. It has so much, and it is pivotal for moving the season forward, even though it's a Monster of the Week filler episode and all of that stuff. Okay, so this week on the Hellmouth, while we're talking about it, when Joyce introduces her new boyfriend, Ted, everyone is excited to meet him. Everyone, that is, except for Buffy, who can't shake the feeling that something is off about him, especially as he begins to rub her the wrong way. Meanwhile, Giles seeks to rekindle his relationship with Jenny, while Xander and Cordelia keep their ongoing rendezvous a secret from their friends.
I remember when it happened. I was actually so shocked when it happened the first time I was watching. I was like, Cordelia and Xander? But then I was the chemistry was building up for the last few episodes, so I was that makes sense when it actually happened.
Yeah, Courtney was fucking tripping out over them, but she also kind of knew it was coming. She noticed in the Dark Age the little bit of the build up from them.
When she said it, that's when I noticed too.
Yeah, now that we are where we are, it's obvious, you know, the underlying sexual tension or chemistry, whatever you want to call it, between them, that they definitely like their output toward it is obviously weird and kind of like that almost elementary school vibe where you're like getting told, oh, if a boy is mean to you, they like you kind of thing. Like they both are so catty with each other, but yeah, I'm kind of here for it. I'm here for it now in this moment. But I also always like the element on any show where like friends get together and then they have to keep it a secret from their other friends. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, obviously we know that can't last forever. So either like they have to stop doing what they're doing or they're going to get found out. So I'm just waiting to see
which one happens.
Which of the two. Yeah, exactly.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Obviously, for this episode, we have a couple of guest stars. Our big special guest star being John Ritter as Ted Buchanan himself, an icon, one of the biggest stars the show has had to date. And rest in peace, because he did pass away in 2003. Respects to him, because you got to give him his mad props. I mean, like, who doesn't know John? Three's Company, Problem Child, 8 Simple Rules, Bad Santa, Sling Blade, Stephen King's It, Bride of Chucky, which is probably my top tier. Like, other than this episode, I love watching him get shot up in the face with them nails and like stabbed to death by Chucky and Tiffany in the back of that van. Like, if you've never seen, I'm assuming maybe Naj has seen Bride of Chucky. Apparently Ritter was a huge fan of the writing on Buffy, so he kind of like put it out there with his agents that he wanted to get brought on the show. And he admired this episode specifically in its narrative, gradually unfolding his character's secret. So he was like, I gotta have this role. And he quoted like the first half, you think, hey, Buffy, just relax, give this guy a break. He's almost too good to be true. And then Ritter explained in this behind the scenes interview for season 2 that there's something about Buffy that I think she sees her mom reacting to this guy in a different way and it threatens her, but then there's just something about the guy that he's, you know, just too perfect. And he said that this was fun being on the show and like interacting with all these people and stuff, like just, I don't know, getting in this world, because it is different than his normal roles. We usually see him in this more comedic and, you know, like, I don't know, it's a whole different element for John. I also wanted to mention that Ritter was beloved by the Buffy crew while he spent his time on set. He earned the trust of Joss too, who let him, since he was a seasoned professional actor, inform a lot of who Ted was going to be. And he quoted, allowed John to sort of take his persona and just ossify it, crystallize it until it was a joke where he was like, father knows best kind of automation, like, because that's exactly how he chose to play the role, which once you find out the robot reveal later, you kind of like that automation phrase totally makes sense. And the father knows best, you know what I mean? But that's also the way the motherfuckers was thinking in the 50s and shit, which I go on a big ass tangent about misogyny.
I love
this episode has
I would love to hear it.
Other stuff about John, though. I'm giving him his 5 seconds since he's RIP. Everyone would apparently go to his trailer on set to hang out with him, and they never called him John. They were always like, John Ritter, because he was a big name on the show. And apparently out of everyone, him and Allison Hannigan, who plays Willow, formed a good friendship, and she highly loved working with him. Apparently he bought her the shirt that she wears in this episode from the wardrobe department, the one that's got the rubber ducky on it. And Allison said, I remember I wore this rubber ducky shirt, and in the episode that John Ritter was in, I was like, I love this shirt so much. Well, John apparently went to the wardrobe and was like, can I buy this shirt so she can have it? And Allison had no idea, and it was just in her trailer one day with a note that said, John wants you to keep this. And she puts it as like a glorious gift that she's ever got. Apparently she still has it, and she was like, oh fuck, I really like that shirt. And that was beyond of him to like go out there and stick his neck out to do something nice like that for someone. It's very sweet,
especially in the costume department. Like sometimes like they keep costumes and they won't let you like have it when shows are done. So the fact that they were like, okay, you can just have it, like that was, I'm actually shocked they actually allowed that, to be honest. I would have said thank you.
I literally have never even thought about that before. I was like, damn, I wonder how many people like put something on and they're like, this was literally like made for my body. I love it so much. Like, how much money can I give you? And I want to know like how many people have bought from
the rubber ducky shirt.
You know, not. I mean, if it's like, I'm sure they gauge it too, because if you're John Ritter asking for a price, they know you got money. They're probably like $5,000 for the shirt.
But like, listen though, I could get it if it's like, let's say the dress from Prophecy Girl. If Sarah or somebody went to the wardrobe department, was like, I want this dress. Now maybe that would be something, but this rubber ducky shirt, I've been like, here, you can take the shit. Like, we got the shit at fucking Target like for $3. Like, you know what I mean? It's like a random shirt. It's not like an iconic episode shirt. So I'm sure they just gave it to him and they didn't even like make him buy it. But at the end of the day, I would be one of the people on sets that'd be just stealing shit. Yeah. Like, I'd be taking stuff home, like all the things.
Like, let me take a souvenir from all the hard work I did this episode. Let me get that.
That's all the gas I have to throw for John for now. Our second guest star on the show, though, is James G. MacDonald, and he plays Detective Stein, which I'm going to call Detective Vaughn all episode. Detective Vaughn is a guy that almost tried to arrest me back in the day because I made some kind of joke that apparently was not appropriate. I got read my Miranda rights and stuff.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
It was interesting. So I have trauma anytime I watch a show and like some detective comes on reading people's rights and stuff. If you hear me say Detective Vaughn, no, I'm not just stupid and getting stuff incorrect. Getting into the episode, though, my opening thoughts for it. The first thing I'm going to say is I love Buffy's snark in this one more than anything. This attitude that she portrays, the whole thing towards Ted, like not liking her mom's boyfriend, I totally vibe with it. This was me every single time. My mom, every 5 months had a new boyfriend. Your mom, probably the same, Courtney, like, literally. Like hopping from man to man. I'm like, I don't like him. I don't like him. I don't like him. And they were never a robot, but there was just reasons. But her natural talk backer energy that she's got in this episode, like, and being a person that's sarcastic, totally was driven from this. This is why I relate to Buffy so much, because she's the ultimate smartass in the whole show. That's why she's always punning, and we call it Buffy banter when she's like saying some shit before she goes to slay some vampires. Like, she's serving. My second thing, Courtney, this is an episode I was excited for you to get to, and we started to talk about it before we came in here, and I want to hear your thoughts from jump, because I was thinking about it in early season 1, like that this specifically was an episode I was excited to get to. I couldn't wait to make the jokes about beg to differ, because I'm like, we're gonna put that on a shirt one day, because this just sounded like something that me and you were gonna like attach to. And I like that before we came in here, you were like, Brandon, why did you not tell me this was such a good fucking episode? I'm like, girl, I'll tell you that about every episode. I don't understand. So what did you think?
I mean, you do, but I was just surprised, because usually if something like, I guess more of the turning point episodes you do point out, but I'm just surprised you weren't like, listen, get ready for like the fire of this episode, because you're going to go get everything from fucking angry as shit to laugh your ass off to be disappointed in Joyce again and want to keep the positive vibes flowing, but you can't. And all the things. So I really loved this episode. I think it's one of my favorites, if not my favorite so far, I think. And it definitely came with one of my favorite endings of an episode so far, too.
Oh, yes. I cried. I cried in the ending. We'll talk about it when we get there. But, like, holy fucking shit. I loved it. And I like it sealed up some stuff in this episode for that, too.
For sure.
As for you, Naj, because I knew when we were messaging, you were like, I can't wait to drag Ted. I can't wait to revisit this and see my initial thoughts. I'm going to have to go back and see what I said about it and all the things. Like, what do you think? One initial reaction, because I can't remember when I originally watched your YouTube episode for this, because it was years ago, but like, tell me your first reactions on it and how that compared to like your episode watched this time around.
When I first watched it, I was more annoyed with like everybody else. I was like, why is no one like, why is this the one episode where everybody's like judging Buffy's like eternal reaction to this man? And then like rewatching it now, I'm like, okay, well, I understand why they see it, but then I'm just like, when I first watched, I was like, Joyce, are you serious? Like, do you not see this man? Why didn't they tell this? Like, why are nobody saying anything? But then I rewatched it from a different lens, or the lens that they were trying to give, which is like, maybe Buffy was paranoid at some point, but she was always right. So I started to see like, oh, well, obviously it's not, Joyce's fault, as much as I'm annoyed at some of the actions she did. Like, oh, of course it's this. So I kind of like let the episode like slowly develop instead of me judging everybody, because when you react, you just get so visceral off the bat that you're not even thinking about what is actually happening. So you're like, well, why did they let this happen? Or why did you just threaten Buffy and not get hurt? So I let it happen. I was like agitated this time, because I was like, okay, I got to take notes. I got to actually pay attention. And yeah, I actually like enjoyed it way more than I thought I would, because I was like, maybe I'll still hate this episode. And I actually ended up liking it more than I initially did.
I did have also that this episode seems to be paying tribute to the slasher home invasion horror film genres. The first time we see that Buffy attacks Ted, she really thinks that she killed a person too. And it isn't until later that we learn that Ted is actually obviously an android. The episode was an opportunity to explore what it would be like if Buffy murdered someone without actually taking it there. We were able to get into the issue of, what happens if Buffy kills a human guy? Even though he had revealed himself to be genuinely creepy by the point it was too late, it was still a human. And that was something that new for her to go through. So I like the fact that the show had that experience for Buffy. To bring him back and then show later that he was in fact a murderous robot is just fun after that. So this one has a lot of elements within it obviously going on. The gang helping Buffy out. Cordelia's even heavily present in this, which I loved again, because we keep seeing more immersion of Cordelia within this. We also thankfully we get the conclusion to what's going on with Giles and Jenny, as we started to say, moving forward. But this episode so far out of any is one that could easily be real. Not so much the robot parts, but a man or murderer to be exact could have totally been doing this, trying to get new wives and forcing them to die sealed away in a home before finding his next victim. Like, total horror movie bullshit that you could go through. Invading their home also in life beforehand. I mean, Courtney, you remember like the Penn Badgley movie, The Stepfather, we used to watch all the time? Like, this is kind of like almost a mock-up of that kind of stuff, but that's the more serious tone and like crazy shit's going on horror-wise.
Yeah.
So it's like the same vibes. And it also kind of gives that abusive father and stepfather trope within it too. Someone who is violent and these women fall victim to his like antics. You know, we always hear about the fucking mom meeting the guy and she's like, I'm bringing home this guy, and he's always nice kind of at first. And then, you know, as time dissipates, we find out he's a drunk. He's doing all this and he's beating on her behind closed doors. And then he starts attacking the daughter too, or the son, or like just being an all around piece of shit. And then she doesn't leave him. And then, you know, she's married to him. It's just like iconic for this to happen. So it's kind of like in subtext within this episode. So I kind of liked that they went there with this. And I don't think I ever really paid attention to like the home invasion and like the slasher horror kind of elements that are presented in Ted until I read about them. But
That's
yeah,
so true.
I guess we can go ahead and get into Ted, then we can push play on the episode.
In every generation there is a chosen one. She alone will stand against the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. She is the Slayer.
We open on our trio as they walk down Ravello Drive, approaching Buffy's home. Willow and Xander are going on about Captain and Tennille and calling Buffy for backup on their argument, but she is aloof and was in her head with the happy non-thoughts, expressing that it is so because it's nice that everything's been quiet of late. Xander adding, with Spike and Drusilla out of the way, they've been riding the mellow, totally calling himself out, by the way, of the jinxiness of this situation. Good job, Xander, because we'll let it slide this time, but this is the third time like this energy of the jinx has come up. Xander said it first in School Hard, and then Buffy, like literally, I think in the first part of What's My Line, when she's talking to Willow about her date with Angel, she's like, as long as nothing bad happens, and then she gets attacked by the First Order Taraka guy. I'm like, y'all need to stop saying this. And then like Buffy and Willow scolded him so hardcore in School Hard, and they're like slapping him. They're like, shut the fuck up, dummy. But I like how they're playing on that now too, and Xander's calling himself out. Willow then clarifies with her that the order has been called off of Buffy's head. The bounty hunters are not going to be attacking Buffy anymore. So I guess that's what happens after the fact. I don't know if they just stopped or like Spike called them up on the phone and he was like, hey, by the way, like this didn't, well, Spike didn't call nobody.
Right.
I was going to say Drusilla
was like, she's like, I got this. That was it. And they also ask how Angel is, by the way. Xander asks, pretending that he cares. Buffy telling him better, and Willow commenting how she assumed Buffy's loving playing nursemaid. Buffy deterring Xander's common retorts about naughty things. They arrive at her front door, and Buffy goes to unlock it, but the door pushes open, not having been closed all the way, as she gets a worried look on her face and edgy music cues. At this like scene too, Courtney, were you like, what's going on? Like, just feeding it in because you're like, oh shit, but Joy's dead up in the house. Like,
no, I literally was like, watch it just be like, you know, something innocent. I didn't think she had a boyfriend, but I was like, just watch Darla be there and, you know, asking for like something big to eat.
Yes, she came back from the ashes.
She got some
She enters, telling the two to wait there for a moment, and she slow walks in, hearing a glass fall, and her mother cry out, no! Buffy retrieving her steak out and running into the kitchen to open the door to find John Ritter making out with Joyce Summers. I was like, she pulled in the hottest guy that she could in the 90s. John Ritter, but of course it's not John Ritter. The two looking like teens caught in the act too and surprised, but not as surprised as Buffy, who is left speechless, quickly hiding her steak behind her back. Buffy apologizes for barging in, and Joyce informs her that she broke a wine glass, and also notates that Buffy's home early as the man says hi to Buffy, and she gives him back the shortest and most displeased hi that you've ever heard. She's like, hi. Joyce snaps back into reality of positive vibes that need to start flowing at this moment and tells the dude that this is her daughter Buffy, then introduces her to Ted as Buffy just stares at him. We cut to black and we cue the Buffy theme. Bow, now, now, now. I'm dead. Okay.
That was the best.
What did y'all think about our woman Joyce in here getting macked on?
At first, until I saw who it was, and then for some reason I immediately got bad vibes, and I was like, oh no, here we go. This is not trustworthy at all. I don't like it. But at first, for a split second, I was like, oh shit, Joyce, oh, what? She brought somebody home? And then I had instantly like regretted even being happy for her, because I was like, I don't trust him. I don't like the way he looks. I like nothing about his energy. But then I instantly started feeling bad for Buffy, because I was like, I already know she's not going to be having this at all.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw it, I was excited for her. I was like, you know, she's finally getting a new man after what happened with, you know, Buffy's like father. But after a while, everything he did was just so odd and weird that I was just like, yeah, I can't support him.
Yeah, I really wish I could remember. I was so young when I watched this the very first time, so I don't remember initially knowing what was going on. I feel like I always just remember everything that goes down in the episode, like nowadays rewatching it. But it is interesting to see Joyce kind of come in and like she's got a hot date there. She's home macking out with this hottie, like, or a guy that she finds hot. And honestly, John Ritter is attractive, except his haircut in this time frame. Like, I rag on it later, but either way, like, I like that she pulled a guy. She's like seemingly happy. We haven't even seen Joyce for like 3 or 4 episodes. Like, we haven't seen her much this season. So I'm like, where the fuck is Joyce? And I'm like, obviously she's not only smoking weed, she's out here at the art gallery hanging out with Ted after hours. It's just crazy. And then obviously we got all the elements later on too, but my first impressions, he seems like a really nice guy. But then like when Buffy, I don't know, I was taking it into account. Courtney said with Ford, when he came in and lied to me, you were like calling it. You're like, I already know that whenever a new character is introduced, they're either going to die in the first 5 minutes or they're evil, or, you know, it's a monster of the week and maybe they're the villain or the bad person. So kind of going into the show, you almost know that trope. So I was watching it in that way. And I was like, I bet Courtney's over here watching this. And she's like, he's about to like slice our necks up right now. Like, what's happening? He's about to eat Joyce. He's a praying mantis.
Totally.
Like,
right. I was like, oh no, this is like some Ted Bundy bullshit right here. I'm not here for it.
Arriving back in the kitchen as Willow and Xander are getting a cooking lesson from Ted, and Buffy's out back with her mom taking out the garbage. As Buffy calls out the late nights at the gallery she gathers was doing a little more than cataloging art. Joy stating she's been waiting for the right moment to tell her about him, calling him a wonderful man. Buffy wondering though how they met. Joyce quickly informs her that he sells computer software and he did a whole number on her computer systems and freed up lots of her time. That time that Buffy claims helped her to meet new people.
And smooch them in my kitchen.
Joyce bashfully saying she wasn't supposed to see that though. And I was like staring at Joyce when she was outside too. And they spend some time on Joyce's hair in every episode. This bitch is always serving some like bouncy curls. I mean, as a hairdresser, I'm always paying attention to these people. And then I started staring at Ted's hair too in the kitchen. And then later on when he's at the school and he's got that like off the ears kind of coiffed feathered back with the almost mullet in the back working for him. And I was just like, I just kind of wanted to come up with some scissors and snip off the last few inches of that shit because we can't. But you know, 80s and 90s, that was the style, I guess.
Sadly.
Inside, Willow is chatting to Ted about her liking her 9-gig hard drive, but Ted says that it lacks the word love due to her only having half of an upgrade. And Willow's like, well, who can afford that shit? He states he gets the demos for free and would be pleased to pass them along to her for the same price, aka for free. Any friend of Buffy's gets the perks. And Willow expresses herself in what Xander calls geeker joy.
What? That's the sound she makes when she's speechless with geeker joy.
Willow's little laugh is so cute. She's just
so
like,
cute.
like it's fucking stupid. Xander's adding that the adding that the mini pan pizzas Ted has made them are fucking phenomenal. Wondering his secret, which we learned after baking, you fry them in herbs and olive oil. And I'm like, yum, I'm jealous.
Yum, I'm jealous.
But only when fried in cast iron skillets. It does the trick. And I was like, I ain't even gonna lie. Growing up, I always wanted to eat one of Ted's little pizzas. And it reminds me almost like of a gassed up, like I used to take my Lunchables, the pizza Lunchables, and I used to put them in the microwave for like 30 seconds and heat them.
Really?
You're trying to make it fancy.
So I was like, damn, I should have popped them in the like some olive oil and some herbs and some parsley and shit and fried them up in the cast
you in your
iron.
kitchen at 11 years old with olive oil and herbs out, and your parents like, what the fuck is he doing to his damn Lunchable?
Literally burning the house down.
I do want to ask though, did y'all know right away? Like, did y'all have any idea that something was off with the food with as much as they were like geeked up about it? Because my flags went up right away. I was like, he was making like weed pizza. Because first off, in spite of the fact that Joyce always wants to keep the positive vibes flowing,
I've got my positive energy flowing.
I feel like this group is never this fucking happy, collectively speaking, all at the same time. Like, someone's always got a crisis. But yeah, I mean, Buffy obviously wasn't happy because she's the only aware one, because she's like, I'm not fucking eating his food. Y'all are high. Literally.
Other than commenting on it to write it in the script later, I did not once write anything in here about the fact that Ted was drugging these motherfuckers.
Yeah,
I completely forgot. I knew it's an element in the show, obviously, that Dematorin or whatever the fuck it is.
It was so obvious to me right away. I was like, nah, see, he came in hot with some pizza. He came in hot with some cookies. He came in hot with whatever else. Like at every turn, at every event, at every scene that Ted is in, he's offering somebody something to eat. I'm like, something's wrong with this.
So he was dropping cookies at the police office too? Like he was just giving it out? I feel like
he just had cookies there at the when they were playing mini golf. I'm like, what the fuck? You pulling out a damn huge Ziploc bag of cookies for in the middle of the fucking... He didn't even wait till they laid out a picnic though. He just had them in hand when one of them still has a club in hand. Like, here, eat this fucking cookie. I'm like, oh my God, calm down with the cookie.
Listen though, Courtney, whenever me and you get together to watch the 2 episodes that we got to, me and you have to, one, get some Oreos and some apple juice so you can try Buffy's favorite little like childhood snack. And I feel like we should also make little mini pizzas and fry them up like Ted did and have like a dinner.
Do you also want me to bring some weed cookies?
Yes, please. With some Dimatorin in them or whatever the fuck that shit's
and ecstasy.
I really want to try the little pizzas. I'm surprised I never have. Like I said that like in our Lie to Me coverage, and then I went and bought apple juice and Oreos the next night and actually tried it, and I was like, it's not that bad. I sent you a video and I was like, they're okay. I was like, but I don't know what the fuck Buffy's thinking.
Right.
Buffy and Joyce re-enter the kitchen, and Ted brings the plate of mini joy over to Buffy, and he's like, you want some? And she's like, fuck no, I don't want any of those. But she actually politely declines. She's not a bitch. Like, she suddenly hates pizza though. He senses her vibes aren't as immaculately flowing as her mother's, and apparently all we're going to do is talk about Joyce's positive vibes this episode. And chooses to apologize for how the two of them met tonight, saying he wanted that to go perfectly, adding he is very fond of Joyce and he knows that she is the most important thing in her life, pointing over to the photo of the two on the fridge, completing that since this is the case.
Well, gosh, that makes you pretty important to me, too.
Joyce joins the convo to say she wants Buffy to be okay with this. Ted begs to differ, correcting Joyce to reinstate they really want her to be okay with this. She was like, I'm okay. And Joyce asks, really? And Buffy smiles to say, I am. It's a regular kid thing to do, to be mad at the fact that your parent is dating someone new, especially when they like you've gone through a divorce and all that stuff with your parents and stuff. And I was like, we've all heard or at least done it ourselves. And I was like, this is a standout thing to do, to just be automatically rude to the person. But then I also wrote that she could be sensing something is a little too much with him, especially since he's like obviously not known her mom so long, and he's like, we want you to be okay with this. I'm like, bruh, like, give me time to get to know you. Like, it feels very forced in this moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say too.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's making her like be like extra on guard, because of like the characteristics that he's displaying.
Yeah, I feel like to her it's probably like a hard launch, because we don't know if Joyce actually did like a lot of dating since, you know, her breakup or divorce with Hank. So the fact that the first time she sees her mom with a guy, it's him saying like, as if they're a unit, like, we want you to be happy. You know, we didn't decide this is how we wanted to meet you. It felt like it was already like practice. Like, I don't know. I mean, I understand for like Buffy, she's like, I've never seen my mom like with another guy. You know, we're in this new town and she's already like finding somebody. But the way he talks to her is as if he already imagines them as a family. So I understand why she's already like side-eyeing him. And I was like,
you're so right. And like, I think it implies that they've been together for like a little while anyway. And obviously Buffy had no idea, because like you have to be together for a certain amount of time to even be having conversations about like you meeting someone's kid and all of that. Exactly. So it's like for them to be like, we is very like
when did that?
Like, we've been together for a while, you know, and you didn't know about it kind of vibe. So I'd already be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, no.
Well, as we already know, Ted's moving fast for a reason. Got to get that bitch back to his house so she can die in it.
Literally.
Like, how did that house not stink up? Like, I don't understand.
Skeletons just collecting dust, and he's like, yep, next wife.
Does he hang out down there with them, like play around with their dead bodies and stuff? Like, I don't know what's
do he
going
even
on
clean?
Does he even go down there?
I'm just like, why didn't they show it though?
Because he's still going to work and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So like, I know, I kind of wish they had showed like some skeletons, like, oh,
right, or the outfits. He's like, I got your outfits already. I'm like, what, the ones on the dead body, or is there a dresser? Like, what are we talking about?
Literally, and he said it was
like, we know the closet is occupied.
What was it? His like first 4 wives. So apparently, like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s was where his wives come from. So he's got a different era in outfits, or was he making them all wear 50s outfits? Like, I don't know.
Probably.
We're getting ahead of ourselves, but still, it's worth pointing out. I love this next scene because after Buffy tells them that she is fine, we immediately cut over to the park as a vampire gets smashed entirely through a picnic table, getting back to his feet where Buffy goes ham on his face with a metal trash can lid while Giles watches from behind her. She's clearly not okay with what happened at home because she busts that vampire 10 times with that lid as Giles stammers out. He's like, Buffy, I believe it's and her dropping the lid to use her fist and feet now. She's like, fuck this, I'm done with this. I'm going to go straight into like fist. Completely making this vampire hate the fact that he chose to come out tonight, by the way. Giles calling out again to say
It's staking time, really, don't you think?
his face growing horrid at the beating that the vampire is taking. I was like, Giles is feeling sympathy for this guy right now.
Right.
Like,
let the vampire get a couple hits.
I know, right? Buffy, slow down a little bit. Let him like at least feel like he's gonna do something. Like, oh, I'm taking on the Slayer. Like, no, but you get beat down by the Slayer, and that's what we're gonna call it, the BBD, the Buffy beatdown. Buffy continues to pummel him into oblivion as Giles just takes a seat, realizing she's far from discontinuing. Thankfully, just as he gets settled, Buffy decides now is actually staking time as she knocks the vamp to the ground, staking him as we get the 2K per slay, and he is dust. Finally, like after 12 minutes of fucking watching her fight. Buffy looks around, asking Giles if there are any others, and he retorts, well, for their sake, I certainly hope not. My God.
They cleared out. They was watching from a distance.
Courtney, were you watching this with Meredith?
Yeah.
What were y'all like? What was going on when you were like, God damn? Like,
I mean, I was not surprised because I feel like I kind of channeled some of this energy. Like you said, you know, we kind of come from this space of like having to deal with our moms, like introducing us to several dudes, none of which we liked. And after a certain point, even after the first, second, or third one, you just get irritated because no one's listening to you. It's all the same vibes. And I feel like I could have used a punching bag so many times. Like I was here for it.
Or a vampire.
Like, I understand this rage. I get it. Like maybe no one else does, but I fully get it.
Well, she reminds him that this is her job as Slayer. Him saying she doesn't normally beat them into a bloody pulp beforehand, though, wondering if everything's okay. Her giving him the yeah, fine we all give when we are indeed not fine. Taking a seat by him, questioning why the park's been hot with vamps of late. Him saying with their leaders gone, they return to their easy feeding grounds. They better hope little James' mom started picking him up early these days, by the way, at the park. Because remember in freaking a lot of me, that damn little boy was at the beginning of the park, and he's like, my mom's always late to pick me up. And I was like, bro, if them vampires crawl in this part, little James is now officially dead.
No, if he sees Drusilla this time, it's a different.
100%. They ain't gonna be like, what was your mommy say when they find your body? She ain't gonna have a body. She's gonna gobble him up, bones
she
and
ain't
all.
be singing no songs to him.
She'll be running and catching them. I do like how Buffy takes her anger out here. This vampire should be an example to others in town that the Slayer is a huge threat beyond just the fact that she's a Slayer. She took him on with ease as well. And if other vamps had witnessed this, they would be clearing out of Sunny D in batches. I do find it also kind of bad, though, that this is Buffy's outlet for her anger. Of course, it's actually warranted. And thankfully a vampire, but we see the flip side of what her anger can do later when she goes up against Ted for round 1 mid-episode. And it reminds me of a lot of another scene that we get in season 3. Naj, you know what I'm talking about. And the quote that Giles makes from this episode actually reappears in that episode too. And I was like, and I never caught that before. I was like, oh, fuck. So I don't know, the parallels with it, I think it's interesting, especially with the story arc that goes down there too. It ties back to Ted, which I'm saying now so I can like breadcrumb Courtney later, and when we get there obviously I'll mention it. But I was like, this mirroring for these episodes and the characters that we'll meet later, like holy fucking shit, the stuff that they are able to, like, I know they weren't like planning out the timeline technically for that, but they were able to connect it. And I like when shows writers have the ability to go and do this,
especially with the premise that season 3 has, because it's right after, like, so like once you watch this episode you're like, oh, this is forgettable. You get into season 3 and it's like you go on and you're like, oh wait, that was charged before, let me go back and watch Ted. And it makes so much sense because it's like, oh well, what if that was the case? And it just makes the storyline so much better.
Anyways, Buffy is telling Giles vampires are creeps. He agrees that's why one slays them. Then she goes on a tangent that's obviously about Ted and not vampires at all.
I mean, people are perfectly happy getting along, and then vampires come and they run around and they kill people and they take over your whole house. They start making these stupid little mini pizzas and everyone's like, I like a mini pizza, but I'm telling
Buffy.
you,
laughable as fuck. Giles calls her out on the subtext rapidly becoming text, asking again if there's anything that she wishes to share. And I love this because he's really trying to open up to her and like get her to talk, because he's obviously like pays so much attention to Buffy. He's around her more than anybody else in the show. He's like, you can talk to me. And then I don't get why she just didn't. She talks to him about almost anything else, but I guess she's trying to like not open up about it right now because she like kind of almost knows she's being like immature, as she said last couple episodes. Like, this is just her being like, whatever, I'm gonna blow off steam, it is what it is, I'm not ready to talk about it. Most kids are kind of like that anyways. But I did like the fact that Giles is like very persistent a few times now in this one scene to be like, what's wrong with you? He's noticing, you know? She tells him no, that there's nothing that she wishes to share and to forget it. Then Perky all of a sudden to ask if she thinks that there will be any more vampires. She's like, I'll gladly wait. I'm like, of course you will. I know I said it was kind of an unhealthy outlet, but at least this is an outlet. If she has anger problems and anger issues, at least she can go beat up and slay and kill things that are supposed to be not a part of the world.
I think between beating up vampires, that's probably the best outlet. Or isn't it like hinted that she also writes in a journal because later on in the episode? So it was either that or she has to wait a few hours to like rant in her book, which is then not even sacred because Ted ends up reading it anyway. So I guess the only way she can get her anger out is by beating any vampire that's next to her at this moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Giles just looks off as we flash over to school the next day as Buffy tells Xander if he says one more word, things for him are going to become dire. Him scolding her for not even bothering to taste the little pizzas, because it doesn't tell us what they're talking about when the scene opens back up. But then they talk about the pizzas and they're like, he's apparently raving as like a lunatic about fucking Ted. It's the Dementoran talking, but still. Claiming Ted is Master Chef Gordon Ramsay, aka Gordon Tedsy, I called him. Willow clocks Buffy and questions, you don't like him? Buffy saying she doesn't know him. So far, all she sees is someone who apparently has a good job, is nice and polite, and makes her mother happy. Xander sarcastically yelling out,
what kind of a monster is he?
This is one of the moments I love Xander for this type of shit, because this is me with friends. I'm like, bitch, y'all are overreacting. Like, what are you talking about?
The sarcasm slips out every time.
Buffy, for real. Buffy calls him a clown, and Xander calls out the psychological vibes that are flowing in the form of Freud. Willow adding it is giving separation anxiety, the mother figure getting taken away, conflict with the father figure. And I'm like, damn, Willow be reading too many books.
Right.
Buffy hearing only that part, claiming he is not her father figure. Xander taunting her over having parental issues. And Buffy finally admits it was weird seeing her mother French a guy and has bought her a ticket to therapy land. But it's more than that to her, claiming she's pretty good at sensing what's going on around her. And there's something 100% wrong with this Ted, as we see Ted coming up behind them and Xander trying his best to alert his presence. I'm like, that's good friend vibes right there. But Buffy's like, the fuck you doing here? And he informs that he was upgrading the software in the guidance office, reminding him of Willow's upgrades he conveniently has in his pocket for her. And I love Willow. She's like, what a day. Does that weird little gibberish shit. Like, she's swooning over Ted. Like, so he's like checking off Willow off his list. He's got Xander wrapped up with the fucking pizzas and shit. Like,
got Joyce.
Got Joyce. Like, everybody, Buffy, they all dialed
the whole
in.
Town. He got the whole town. Like, wow.
Literally.
She's the last one.
You try to call him on the phone, he's selling you every bit of computer software that you ever could. He'd be like, this is $5,000, and be like, sir, I can't afford that. He'd be like, but you need it. And they'd be like, okay. Apparently, as we hear later. Buffy's face looking at Willow too whenever she's doing this. Buffy is skeezed out by both these motherfuckers. And Ted asks Buffy if she likes miniature golf, and Xander's like, who does it? And I'm like, your name is not Buffy, so shut the fuck up first of all.
Right.
Ted saying he and her mother were thinking this Saturday was perfect for dragging the three out there to swing the iron with the stuffy peeps. Buffy starts to make excuses, but there is no time for those because there will be a picnic basket with many pizzas and cookies. Gasp. I wrote that because like Xander does that whole like, he's like, oh, with mini pizzas. This shit was killing me. Buffy finally lets out that they got that thing and Willow has her back, but Xander does not, and calls that thing boring and that they are in. Once again, speaking for Buffy. And then Ted's like, great, this is awesome, this is ravishing. And I was like, man, Xander would have gotten the biggest bitch out sesh right after this like whole instance, as soon as we separated, because that's not good friend code right there. Like, of course Xander worked this into his advantage here, like as he does almost everything else, and did not think twice about Buffy's feelings here, which is kind of annoying. Like, this is that point where people are going to go right on the podcast and I'm bashing Xander right now, but this is not good friend energy. If you got your friends back, like, once again, it's the Dementoran talking, god damn it. Yeah. But fuck, like, this is typical Xander behavior to like do something that's going to offset good vibes for him, no matter at the cost of anybody else. As long as he's having a good time, he doesn't really give a fuck. And obviously Buffy's feeling uncomfortable. There ain't no friend of mine that I would throw under the bus like this.
Yeah.
So this just pissed me off.
He couldn't read the room at all. And I feel like sometimes with Xander as a character, sometimes like with this episode, I'm like, okay, I can justify it because of, you know, him eating them little piece of treats. But then I'm like, when is it him and when is it actually just random Xander? Because Xander sometimes do this on a merit. So it's like, Xander, you're already on my list, but here you go, just for some food, for some treats, for some
Dematorin.
The ecstasy.
It's the drugs.
He became an addict. Oh my God.
I do want to bring up a point though, and I don't know if you felt like this at all ever, Brandon, but back in the 90s, I feel like it was still a little more like you didn't have as many divorced households as you do now. Now it's like a lot more normal, I think. And, you know, you'd get the whole like sympathy spiel a lot about people being like, oh my God, your parents are divorced. And I'm like, yeah, like I don't notice, you know what I mean? Like I don't know any better. So for me, it was always just weird to kind of take that in. And I feel like I get a lot of that energy. It's almost like I don't even really think he's intentionally being like super dismissive. I mean, he was when he was just like overriding her idea of diverting hanging out with this homie. But at the same time, I think that when you're kind of judging from the space of not understanding how it feels to not be okay with a person, and it's not circumstantial to the whole situation of it's just someone your mom's dating, you know, like I think like everyone looks at it like, oh, she's just been out of shape because her mom's finally dating someone. But Buffy's like, no, I have a real issue with this whole vibe from this person. It has nothing to do with that. But then people just get so dismissive. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
no, absolutely.
As a point for the dismissive like behavior, you know, I think a lot of people
just
do that.
brushing
Like,
it off, like it is what it is. It's kind of like how we would be like, because we didn't give a fuck, and maybe he was just automatically assuming Buffy wouldn't give a fuck for the time frame too. But I think it's like different for Buffy because like I don't know the age you specifically were, but I was 3 years old. My parents divorced. So I never really knew them being together. Okay,
old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we never knew our parents together. All we ever knew was them going into their next marriage or partners or boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. And I think for someone like Buffy, this has only been like a year and a half since Joyce and Hank have been split. So it's really still fresh for her. And that's why it's bothering her so bad. And then obviously why she makes the comment with Angel later about why she feels this way truly about Ted, because that's the person that she chooses to divulge all the information to is Angel.
Right.
Of course. Yeah. I think that you bring up a good point about Xander in that case, that he's just kind of overriding her feelings because he's like, oh, you should be over that. Like, your parents, it happens. Like, parents are divorced. My parents aren't even happy.
Like, it's okay to force it on her kind of thing because, like, it's almost like if we push her, then she'll like him and she'll get over this little, like, oh, I don't want my mom to date anyone right now,
just
you know, or I want my parents back together.
That's like really unfair.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt like a lot of that because I was like, I feel like they're dismissing the issue because she also, as much as she has a problem with him for those circumstantial reasons, I think she's also trying to get them to see there's something sketchy about him, but they refuse to see it because obviously they're high off the food, but also because they're still from the perception of she just doesn't like him because it's her mom's new boyfriend, you know, and so it's not like her red flags for him basically are being dismissed for that reason because they're just like, well, of course she's going to be annoyed with him or bent out of shape or not like him, but she's really like, bro, I don't like him because he slapped me in the face first off.
Yeah, I feel like this whole idea of like her friends not like looking at her point of view is kind of also like projection, where it's kind of like touched later on about how they should be happy that, you know, a single guy is giving a single mom a chance. It's like, well, why aren't you happy for your mom getting in a dating pool? It's so rare for, you know, a single mom to actually get another man that's interested in wanting to handle a daughter. And it's like, well, you know, you're still not understanding what Buffy's point is. Like, when do y'all ever doubt her like suspicion ever? Like, and it's rough because it's like it's rough because it's like we know why later on, which is the drugs. But before knowing that it's the drugs, you're like, what is going on here? Like sometimes I still don't even be
everyone is so crazy right now.
Yeah, it's so I'm just like, am I going crazy with y'all? Like, what treats?
Yeah. And honestly, this is the episode, and I'm going to breadcrumb Courtney in a way here without spoiling too much, but I feel like this is okay because we're going to like notice it as we go along. But this kind of starts the trope of people not believing in Buffy. And you brought that to the table whenever you first came in, Naj, like, and even Prophecy Girls podcast, they coined the like, what is it, believe Buffy, or I can't remember exactly what the hashtag thing is like, but they made a whole thing about it whenever they did their rewatch of the show, because there's oftentimes Buffy as the Slayer brings up, I've got a bad feeling about something, and everybody kind of has doubt in her, and I'm like, this is the bitch that's in charge. Like, I'm sorry it didn't
Saving
come
your
from
lives.
Giles's mouth, like, but y'all don't believe her half the time about half the stuff that goes on, and she's always fucking right. So
Just like
I'm just gonna
just
throw
like
that out there
Prue.
now. This is not 100% yes.
I'm like, what do we learn? Y'all have to trust the main
Yup.
character. And I just
Yup.
think that with this whole like idea is like judging her after she's been saving our lives repeatedly, and then I was like, all right, y'all got it. This episode I'll let y'all slide, because now I'm opening my eyes. But if this was any other day, which we will
Y'all ain't
see,
sliding.
you'll see.
Like,
it's gonna be rough.
basically, if they didn't insert the whole drug in the food bit, y'all would be fucked, right?
Literally. Shitty ass friends, but we'll talk about more stuff like that as we go along the series. So let's go over to the next scene. We cut over to Giles appearing at Jenny's classroom to use the flimsy excuse of her textbooks being delivered to the library in order to come speak to her, or at least she calls it that. He wanted to see how she was doing, though, and she says that she's doing good, actually. She stayed out of mortal danger for 3 weeks now, something she could get used to. I'm like, ooh, just shade, the passive aggression, but obviously not really, because it's direct. She has trouble sleeping still, though. Giles agreeing she needs time or possibly space, she offers, throwing up her hands whenever he tries to come a little closer to her as well, telling him that she doesn't need him making puppy dog eyes at her, wondering if she's all better. In fact, it makes her feel worse about not being better yet. That responsibility isn't on her, and he apologizes for making dog eyes and was just worried. She finishes his words, and she gets it. He backs away, exclaiming that he shouldn't have even bothered her, leaving the room quick as fuck as she exhales, realizing, oh, Jenny, you were kind of being a bitch right here, like telling herself that. So I found myself getting angry with Jenny in this scene, and I kind of had forgotten what came later, because it's been a little bit since I've rewatched this episode, at least a few years. And I was like, on one hand, I get it. She has validity in her actions and reasoning, but he cares about her. So excuse him for trying to check up on you, first of all, just to pop around. I didn't see him making puppy dog eyes. He was just literally like trying to figure out how to put his foot in the door to like, hey, I almost got you killed, like ish, like how you doing? Like, I'm going to check in on people. But on the other hand, he didn't deliberately put her in danger either. And she chose to date the man knowing the risk and possibilities of this life that she was getting involved in. And she had 3 different chances, we've talked about it, to walk away. And she still got up underneath this motherfucker. So who really is at fault here for this interaction specifically? Because I felt she was like being a hardcore bitch. Like I said, I do get her being like, I need some space, I need some time, but she could have just like went about this completely different. Like, what do you guys think? Did he deserve that kind of treatment from her initially?
No, I'm happy you actually brought it up, because I thought I was actually going insane, because I was like, I didn't even remember her being this like upset. So when I rewatched it, I said, why is she actually crashing out about this guy when she kind of knows what he get into? Maybe not the severity of like how intense some of the supernatural things is, but lady, you had chances to actually leave. You had chances to like actually uninvest and unengage in the relationship, and you continue to do so. And then to sit here and try to make like Giles is pathetic for caring about you when y'all are like dating or messing with each other, it's actually purely insanity, sweetheart. I don't know what the fuck was going on when she decided to, like, it's 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks, and she's acting like it was yesterday. Like, it's been 3 weeks and you're still upset. Then just tell him to call off the date. Like, what are we doing here? Giles is better than me, because I would have said, well, I didn't ask you to stay here. I didn't ask you to give me any time of day. I didn't ask you to get possessed by the demon. This wasn't my fault. Like, what's
Get possessed by a
going on?
demon. Jenny gone. Jenny, you better get gone. That's what I got.
I said I would have broke up with her then.
For real.
Honestly.
I agree. I think that I at first understood her point, but then as the conversation evolved and she kind of didn't get out of that space of being a little bit harsh to him, I was kind of where you guys are, which is, number one, you got yourself into this. You had like plenty of intros and plenty of trial runs and plenty of times to take a step back or to exit the whole relationship entirely. But I think that it was like a little bit of projection, because of course, like she stated, he's making her uncomfortable because he keeps asking if she's okay. And even though that's well intended on his behalf, I can understand why it's triggering for her, because it's making her feel bad. Like she said, that she hasn't completely healed in 3 weeks from almost literally dying. So I think that when all of that is at stake, you probably need a lot of time to process it. But especially you feel like almost rushed, I think, to process it. If the person that is like inquisitive about you and you were involved with that kind of caused all these things to happen, I think that you feel rushed like to heal from it. So that way you can give them a definite answer on like if you want to move forward or not, if nothing else, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like, she doesn't know if Giles is just genuinely like, hey, are you okay? Like as a human being, or if it's being received from her end, like, hey, are you okay? But also, are we okay? You know?
Yeah.
So I think that she feels like rushed to kind of like dissect the whole thing, and she can't do that just yet.
Yeah.
So I understood it both ways, but like y'all said, I think she could have been a lot fucking
a lot
more
better.
gentle toward Giles.
I just think
for
she
sure.
didn't identify the situation for what it was too. Like you said, like obviously she has validity in feeling this way and expressing herself, but like I said, Giles isn't doing what she thinks that he's doing. He's not in there saying like, oh, you need to just get over that at all. If he had walked in there and be like, bitch, that was 3 weeks ago. Like we've had 7 other demons that we fought in the last 3 weeks. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I know you ain't been involved in it, but like, God forbid, did you not know what happened with Spike and Drusilla this last couple of weeks? Like, your shit ain't nothing compared to what Angel was about to get dusted. He almost got killed by a slayer. He almost got killed by vampires. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Jenny, this is not like, we had bigger fish to fry. Like, you need to calm down. But
yeah,
it's just the way she went about it that like really like tweaked me and stuff like that. I guess I like it in a sense though, because it kind of gave her the chance to recalibrate her direction, and obviously she seeks Giles out later, which we'll get to, but like I think she had to have this first. And like you said, I like the word projection you used, because she definitely was projecting some insecurities that she was feeling about everything, almost probably as if like I said, she's had all these chances to not get involved, and she's almost like pissed off with herself because she let this happen in a way when she could have avoided it. But okay, well, we can get over to Angels now, and over there Buffy is redressing his poor little innocent sexy hand. Like he's just chilling back there in the recliner, and she's over there bandaging and sitting him on the arm of the chair. I was like, girl, you gonna suck his dick after? Like, what's going on? What else you bandaging, Buffy? Like, sorry, let me stop. I'm be nasty. Angel's just so hot.
Be
He
real.
looks so innocent, please.
Be real.
And she's going on and on though about Ted.
So Mom's like, do you think Ted will like this? And this is Ted's favorite show. And Ted's teaching me computers. And Ted said the funniest thing. And I'm like, that's really great, Mom. And then she said I was being sarcastic, which I was, but I'm sorry if I don't want to talk about Ted all the time.
As Angel looks over droopy at her, calls her out to say, so are we going to talk about something else at some point? And she's like, oh, fuck, and apologizes, saying, though, that she has a lot going on as it is. She doesn't need some new guy in her life. Angel offering, well, maybe her mom does. Buffy calling out his wisdom. Him telling her loneliness is about the scariest thing there is. Buffy finally saying, okay, so mom needs a guy in her life. Does it have to be Ted? Angel questions if there's a guy in mind that would satisfy her. Buffy easily saying her dad. And I like that because Buffy reality checks herself real quick. She's like, okay, like obviously that's not going to happen. And then starts to warm up, telling Angel fine, she will give Ted a chance, but does she have to like him? Angel just smiles and says, kiss me too. And I'm like, damn, he just cut this conversation out. He's like, girl,
he said, I don't want to hear that.
He said, get off that side of the chair, get on this lap. He said, we're going to have that makeout sesh. Finally, something that she wants to do, like kiss. Then the two fall into that makeout sesh, and all of our hearts melt infinitely together. I wrote in my notes.
I know for a fact that Angel was like, I didn't wait all these hours until tonight to talk about some man. Like, where's my kisses at? You didn't want to hear about no damn Ted.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to know, like, obviously they've been making out when she comes over to, like, do that too. And that's why Xander and, like Buffy shut him down when he was like, it's involving smoochies and, like, a maid outfit and all this other stuff. And I'm like, but that's actually probably what Buffy's over there doing. That's why she's like, shut up, Xander. I wrote my notes too. Okay, we got this little scene with Angel. I was like, it was nice to see the kissage here too, but him helping Buffy come to terms with something out of her control and offer a greater perspective. I'm glad they included him of all people to give her this perspective, and then also to show kind of how he's doing in the aftermath of the ordeal, like that we saw, you know, in the 2-parter last episode with Spike and Drusilla. I'm glad he's on the mend, but I was like, almost surprised. I had forgotten that Angel wasn't in this episode a little bit more.
Yeah, it was necessary because he's like the only one that like isn't influenced by Ted. So like he's actually giving a genuine answer that would like go along the lines of if Buffy is just paranoid or not about Ted. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you're like, okay, well, he's the only one that hasn't ate, you know, or drunk the Kool-Aid, if we used to say. So he's the only one that can give us a genuine like response of how Buffy would be feeling, because most of the time he knows or is on the same wavelength with her. And so for her to be like, you know, yeah, let me just actually redact ever thinking my mom and dad would get back together. I'm going to give him a try. Because after this point, she does give him a try. And Ted shows his ass. So.
I think like that's the fun part about Angel too, is he's like this secret. I mean, obviously her friends know about him, but like, what if Joyce did kind of know about Angel, but didn't know he was a vampire, and he like came over and he ate some of these little pieces? He's like, Buffy, I fucking love Ted. Like we got to see him at Goofy or something, you know? Like,
Yeah.
He'd be eternally fresh.
Who had took some in his cave and like just ate at night.
Yeah.
And in the morning, it was like,
No. If Angel had to be in any scene, I'm glad it was this one, is my like overall point, just because we had to have the voice of reason here, because no one else, everybody, like we all saying high as fuck this episode, so they can't grant her that perspective. And I'm surprised Giles didn't have like a time with this to like happen to meet Ted or see him in the hallways at school. Giles is also the first one to be furthest away from computer software bullshit, so he's in there with his books. So Ted didn't go nowhere near that library.
and Giles is over here fighting for the love of his life. He's like, I don't have time for this. Y'all got this. Let me go beg Jenny to come back.
Yup.
He's like, I'm taking the week off.
Well, Saturday has arrived in our next scene as the gang is at the mini golf course making their way through the holes. The next one being the dreaded cuckoo clock that Xander fucking hates. Joyce hyping Ted up on his amazing picnic lunch too. She's like, yum, this shit's delicious. Yeah, because that fucking Dematoran's working through your system right now, so you're like glorifying everything. I was cringing when Joyce is like, you know how rare it is to find a man who can cook? And Ted's like, I know, I've been looking for a long time for one. And they both chuckle like, like I'm like,
boo.
I'm like, fuck it, I'm not, no.
Get down. Where are the tomatoes at?
Speaking of awesome men, though, Ted bets to Buffy the boys must be lining up around the block for her. And I was like, first of all, you do not call out some 16-year-old girls like relationships with other boys. That's so weird.
This is not weird. This is his like second. This is like his third encounter, because it was the house and it was the school, and this is his third encounter. And he hasn't even like talked about her before. And he's like, well, I was a man at your door, huh? What are we talking about? We don't even know your last name, Ted. And you're talking about who's going to line up to date me? Are you serious? Like, Joyce is not even here. Like, do you hear him? She's talking some, this cookie's so damn good.
Joyce is on that Dematoran, and she got that fucking edible high that she ate before she left the house, too.
She's fucked up.
She's floating. She's floating.
We about to get strike number 4 for Ted, because Buffy claims not really. She's like a little shy, and Willow blurts out they are. Like, but Buffy's only interested in, and then like Buffy has to nudge her, and she's like, she's interested in her studies, and then she like calls her
Book Cracker Buffy. It's kind of her nickname.
I'm like, no, that is not her nickname. I'm like, and this is where he steps his bounds again. Like, first he's doing the teenage bullshit that he shouldn't be doing, and then he's over here claiming that he's glad to hear it and assumes that means her grades are to be improving soon. And Buffy is like, what the fuck? And walks over to Joyce to be like, a bitch, what? Like, what is happening right now?
This is when I started to like really start getting annoyed, because I was like, okay, but Joyce, how was there? When would there ever been a time when you were just talking about your daughter's like grades in life? It's supposed to be like an intimate time with you and your man, and you sit here and say, "Yeah, my daughter dumb as fuck." Like, you see what she got on her report card? What are we talking about? Joyce, huh?
No.
I have no clue what the fuck. Joyce is just high all the time, so she's always like fucking a yapper whenever she gets high. She's
like me for real?
She's on that sativa, so she ain't gassed up from the or mellowed down from the indica. She's like on that fucking jolt, fucking got to get shit out bullshit. But obviously, she tells Buffy, she's like, oh, he wants to know all about you, Buffy. And I'm like, red flag. But also at the same time, most guys would kind of want to know about their kid if you got a kid in the picture, because he might have to be stepdaddy vibes. But we also know that Ted ain't playing nice here. So
no, sorry, but there's no way I can defend her in this moment. And I got so annoyed because I was like, Joyce, your own mouth said he wants to know everything about you, and you don't think that's fucking weird?
And even if we even go further and stretch, like even if we go further and stretch, like what if this is a predator that, like, you know how there's sometimes where like men will get close to the mother to get to the daughter. You see how once he saw Buffy, he just was like, okay, let's talk about Buffy 24/7. Lady, protect your child.
Exactly.
What are we doing?
Oh no.
She can't protect her. She's high all the time and never home. She's always on trips and leaving Buffy home for the whole fucking week while bugmen attack her and fucking police officers trying to shoot her in the school.
Oh my God, right. Oh,
like
God.
Joyce didn't get a call and be like, there was an attack at the school, like your daughter almost got shot and this little redheaded boy got shot instead. Like what?
Like,
I know, right? Why is Buffy even still going to school? Like, if my daughter almost got shot at school, she'd never be seeing the light of fucking day.
Joyce said she can pretend not to see it because she definitely closed her eyes and didn't care at all, I guess.
But then you're gonna go as far as to like nail the windows shut, because that's a big deal, is that your daughter's sneaking out at night, but then she got shot up at school, but you'll gladly drop her off at school the fucking next day. Joyce.
I got a comment to make about that shit later, but all Joyce right now got to say is,
Oh, nice shot, Ted.
as he clearly impresses Joyce with his putt, and she moves over to him. Now it's Buffy's turn at the next hole, and Buffy, being the Slayer and all, doesn't have gentle strength and sends the ball flying aggressively as she thinks she's Tiger Woods on a real course. Her ball disappearing behind the mark. Bad luck, little lady. I was like, fuck you, Ted. Like, tell me some bad luck.
Now you hating.
It's just mini golf, though. They won't count it, Joyce offers, but Ted doesn't agree. Rules are rules, and that's not a lesson that they should teach her to take out in the world. Right is right. Stepping over his bounds intentionally again, Buffy claims she'll just go hit her ball from the rough, moving back behind the display, picking up her ball, and then dropping it by hand into the hole, hollering out that she got it.
Beg to differ.
She's spooked by Ted, who was apparently watching her cheating. Okay, so find her score or whatever, she says, and he gets snarky to say she's missing the point there, little lady. I'm like, I'm always getting driven crazy when he's calling her little lady. I'm like, bitch, first of all, I'm not little, I'm grown, like almost, or at least in my mindset, like whatever. And he goes on a tangent. He's like, right is right and wrong is wrong. Why don't people see that? Smacking his club against his leg repeatedly as well. Buffy claiming it's just a game, find her score. And he states, just a game, do your own thing. He's not wired that way. It's not a game. It doesn't count, and he won't stand for that kind of malarkey in his house. Buffy sassing back, well, I guess it's a good thing I'm not in your house. And I was like, ding, 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 Brandon for the win. Because that's me as a motherfucker talking about my parent. I'm like, bitch, we outside. The fuck you talking about? And then this motherfucker just looks at her and says,
Do you want me to slap that smartass mouth of yours?
Buffy grows concerned as fuck. But Ted senses the gang coming up and spins around to her to act all chipper all of a sudden, offering everyone dessert. He's got them cookies and awesome chocolate chip cookies. Some that Buffy must try because Joyce says they're really good. As the gang all eats one and Ted smiles at her. He's got the bag open and he's just like over there. He's like, you want one? Like, no, I don't fucking want one, boy. Shut the fuck up. What the hell you just you gonna offer them cookies? You just have to bop me in the fucking mouth? What the fuck? Like, what?
Right.
I knew right in that moment that he probably wasn't a human being, because I don't know who in the fuck does that unless like you got one of those like fake legs and we just don't know about it kind of thing. But I feel like then it wouldn't look like that with him hitting it. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm taking this the extra mile.
Yeah.
But truly, like I had a lot of questions. So I was like, well, obviously the most logical explanation is that he's not a human being, but he looks like a human being. So I was more in this headspace of like, is he a zombie or like, is he some weird zombie-like thing? Like I definitely wasn't thinking he was like a robot or whatever you want to call it, you know. So I should have known, I think, because they always underlyingly throw in those like undertones of a hint, and obviously it's like big on computer software, so duh. But yeah, I wasn't connecting those dots. I was more like, he's either schizophrenic and he like escaped the fucking like asylum and went and found Joyce immediately, and now shit's about to get real fucking weird because he's real but he's just crazy, or he's not a human being.
Yeah. That's just intense too. I swear to God, I don't know how Buffy kept her mouth shut.
Yes.
How did she keep her mouth shut? I would have literally called him out in front of everybody, and everybody would have been like, oh, Buffy, what are you talking about?
That's probably why she did it.
She probably didn't want to make like a rush, like, because she's already like, apparently to everybody else, they're like, well, we already know you don't like Ted. That's probably what I said. You're lying, which they already tried that, so. Listen, I'm a number one Buffy defender. I know that may be toxic, and I would justify Buffy. I don't care, but this was like, all right, well, nobody hear this? Nobody hear him? Like,
I know.
Why did they let him walk around to like? Why nobody else tag along to make sure she did it? Why did they just allow this man to get close to her and then went back to, oh, you want some cookies too? No, look, I ain't slap him actually because you just threatened me.
I would have threw that bag on the floor and started stomping him, and then we're like, yeah, now I'll give you something to slap me for. Like, I don't know. I would have been egging him on at that point if he had said that, and I would have literally probably threw his cookies on the floor, done something to like make him snap real quick. The next morning, Buffy arrives in the kitchen to obviously tell Joyce about everything, but, you know, she's getting some juice and sticky buns instead. Joyce telling her that Ted made them, and she's like, fuck them damn cinnamon rolls. She puts that shit back so quick, too. She's like, starts to pinch at it, and then she's like, Ted made them, and she like sets it back down. I was like, oh, fuck. And Joyce picks up on that shit, too. She was like, she prefers something that Ted didn't make around here as well. Buffy should check her attitude, says Joyce, and Buffy starts to tell her the vibe she's getting when Joyce cuts her off, saying she doesn't expect her to love him right away like her. Buffy being like, wait, love? You love him? Talk about Freud. That was a slip. Well, I guess so. Joyce claims she wouldn't have anything to do with a man that didn't care for Buffy, though, but Ted does, and she doesn't understand why she doesn't see that. Buffy decides to confide in her mother that he threatened her, and Joyce grows alarmed for like a fraction of a moment, and then Buffy adds that he was going to slap her face, and Joyce stares at her before smiling. She's like, oh, that? He said no such thing. He told her what happened already, and asking, he caught you cheating, didn't he? Okay, yes. Whatever. Buffy admits that he totally wigged after that, and obviously we get some wig watch too because they used the word wig. Then Joyce is adding, he didn't say anything to the others either, did he? You gaslighting the fuck out of Buffy right now, 1,000%. And that screams he's an awesome guy because he didn't do that. Joyce, eating pieces of his delicious treat, says, Ted says we're gonna just have to give you time to come around. Speaking of, he's making dinner for them tonight, so she should come home promptly ready for that. Buffy leaves without saying anything to Joyce too. She's like, okay, well, whatever. She's like, fuck up the rest of that cinnamon roll, because Joyce goes right back into eating it. She's like, these are so delicious. But like the scene in general, I'm like, for that fraction of a second that she believes Buffy, I'm like, you almost had it here, but then you like gaslight your own daughter to be like, oh, he said nothing like that. You just literally told your daughter 2 seconds ago that you would never let some guy come between you and your daughter, or let some guy that you felt some type of way about be a problem. But then you go automatically override everything Buffy just said to you and do this. And then tell her, like, and a gaslight, this before gaslight was even, like, it was a thing, but it was before it was a term. Like, I was watching, I was like, gaslight.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way. And I mean, and the one thing that gets me is like, yes, I know she's under the influence. She just ate some of them treats, so she's already kickstarting that like gaslighting this. But it like literally makes me so mad because there's instances like this in real life where women will be so like hyped for male validation that they'll ignore their daughter or their child or their son being clearly uncomfortable with the situation, and instead of like approaching it with a state of like, let me figure out why my daughter or my child is uncomfortable. How can I approach this as a responsible parent that once again is a single mom and it's introducing, a new lover to this whole family dynamic. And instead, she's basically saying, you didn't talk to him all day. You should be talking to him. You should be greeting him. You should be thanking him because he's giving me a chance, because no man will go for me. And it's like you're putting this pressure on this 16-year-old girl that once again watched you and her dad be in love for like however long she was alive. And then you move to a new city. You're falling in love with this guy. And then you want Buffy to just suck it up. And then she opens up to you about a vulnerable moment. And then you're like, no. Because he would have told us, no, you weren't there, Joyce. So how about we calm down on them sticky buns and let's think. Thank you. Because there's just no fucking way. I was like, Joyce, and I think I probably even worse on my reaction when it, because I don't know how I was able to control myself that time. So I was like, Joyce, are you fucking serious? Do I gotta hop through the screen and actually talk to you?
I gotta hop through the screen and talk to you.
Do I gotta get a whiteboard and start pointing down common sense? I think I have to.
You're like, do you need some sort of presentation on that?
That's a good point, though. They often do that, but that's a big thing that people do just in general, especially when they quote unquote like somebody. They will miss every single red flag that's right in front of their face. Like, unless you're healed in some way or you actually have an open mind to like what's going on around you and an awareness at that, you're not going to pay that no attention. And Joyce fails here as a fucking parent.
I want to know what rendition of the story Ted told Joyce to cover up any kind of trace evidence of him actually, like, very obviously and clearly threatening to physically harm Buffy. I'm just like, what rendition of the story did you give Joyce for her to so easily excuse something like that? Because I don't care who the fuck you are or how long you've known me, but if my child comes and tells me so-and-so threatened to slap me, I'm cutting you out of my life. Like, period. You'll never see us again.
Like, and
I don't care how good the cookies are. Like,
right. Like, is she basically, was this the first instance for her allowing him to actually put his hands on her then? Because what could he have said to allow her to be like, oh, well, he only threatened to slap you, unless he said that he was just going to, like, maybe give her a punishment or punish her. Like, did he like, sweep the words under? Because he said he was going to slap her.
That's what he probably
I want
did.
to know. Yeah.
He's a perfect salesman, so he sold his pitch to her on exactly what went down, and she ate that shit up, just like them cookies and them pizzas. So,
mind you, that's the only thing he been making. Now he added sticky buns to the mix, and she's acting like he's a gourmet 5-star chef.
Nope.
Wow.
I need to see his pasta. I need him to make me some pho. I need him to make me some fucking
some
like
sushi.
what else? Yep.
He probably heating all that shit up in a microwave and just putting a bunch of ecstasy in it.
He was a fresh grocer and put it on the table and said,
he's got the Nestle Toll House recipe.
What was her name? Nestle Toolhouse. Nestle Toll House?
Please.
Well, At school the next day, Buffy walks with Willow and Xander, telling them that she wants to check out Ted, investigate him. Xander retorting, "Can you say overreaction?" Buffy snapping back, "Can you say sucking chest wound?" Willow offers, "It just seems Buffy wants him to be corrupt, like Malcolm the Corruptor." She claims he's uptight, but they don't think that's a slang offense. We see the two of them are enjoying leftover cookies of Ted's during this discussion as well. Xander says in life, there's some things that you just have to accept. And Buffy's like, and Ted ain't one of them. I was like dying right there. I was like, oh shit. Cordelia happens to pass by and Xander calls out, "Hey Cordy, nice outfit." She stops remarking, "Very funny." And he's confused because he was like, "What? It was just a compliment." And she informs him, "Well, you should just keep your fucking mouth shut." And he chases off after her. Willow's like, "What's up with them?" He catches up to Cordelia and she asks what the fuck is wrong with him. He gave her a compliment in front of his friends, stating they're gonna know. And he is clueless, saying like, "Know what?" To which she states,
Please, it's too traumatic for me to even say it.
and he's like, "What, that they kissed?" And she's just like, "Ugh." And he's like, "I won't tell. They won't know. Not his friends or for hers." He's quick to offer, though, "You want to go to the utility closet and make out?" And she's like, "God, is that all you ever think about?" And then she just pauses for a moment and she's like, "Okay." And then they go off to do that. But
she couldn't stand on no business, sadly. She's weak in these two.
Yep, she needs it. She's like, Xander
said,
does it for me, but only with the lights off. This is interesting too, because normally we see Xander and Cordy arguing, but here Xander is giving her compliments and almost treating her like they are dating, even though she will have none of that. She's like, "I don't want anybody to know," but she really do be enjoying them Xander kisses. So he got to be doing something right, is my mindset on it. I'm like, if you don't want all your friends to know about what's going on, but you still gonna go make out with this boy all the time, like, why don't you just at least tell Buffy, Willow, and Giles, because they're not going to bat an eye at it. They're not going to think any differently of Cordelia. But then I guess if they know and then it comes a norm in the group, then the rest of the school might find out. Then there goes Cordelia's reputation.
Yeah, but it's also so funny because, like, we watched Cordelia have no consistent boyfriends at all. Like, we'll see her with one guy and then she'll come with another guy. So, like, this is like the first time.
Mitch.
Yes. Yeah. So the fact that this is like a consistent, which is Xander, it's like, oh, maybe she actually likes this guy because she will probably have a new boyfriend by now.
Yeah, you are right.
Over with Buffy and Willow, though, she's still telling her that Ted's acting like she's in the way and how her mom's acting differently. And Willow's like, "Happy? No, Stepford wifey is the vibe." And that's exactly how Joyce is acting. She asks Willow for her help, and Willow is obviously on board because she's giving off those freaking awesome friend vibes that she always does. And Buffy getting her to find out where he works as a first step. To which she does really quickly, because our next scene obviously flashes over to the computer-filled tech office that is Ted's job. We hear Ted on the phone selling some software, nailing it as Buffy watches him get up and go mark the whiteboard with another tally, putting him in like the highest ranks out of everybody else there. He's got like 18 check marks and everybody else has got like 1 or 2 fucking call marks. I'm like, damn, he's leading this workplace. Bestsellers list. Going to lunch now too, he like states as he exits the room, and that's annoying because, you know, everybody, as soon as he says going to lunch, everybody's like, "Fuck you." Like,
right.
Everybody rolling their eyes like, "God damn, thank God you're leaving this fucking room. Maybe we'll actually have a few sales." Like, the machine. Buffy runs into one of his co-workers who doesn't recognize her, claiming she's a new temp for the day, named Belinda. Belinda the Vampire Slayer. Let's just sit with that for a moment. What if the show was called Belinda the Vampire Slayer? She is smart and brings up Ted being the best, the man claiming no one beats the machine. Buffy cleverly calls him an overachiever since the man's bitter, saying he's probably a shit man with all the ex-wives and such. But he tells her he just has a girlfriend that's cluttering his desk. There's just literally like one little photo over there on his desk, the rest is just computer stuff. Like
is he lying in 4K?
This guy mad. This in 4K. This guy mad because he ain't got no girlfriend on his desk, and if he does, he hates his wife, and he took down the picture. But he also says that he is stoked that he's taking time off from work for the wedding. The one Buffy is being informed is set for 2 months from now, but the guy has to dip because of their boss making an appearance as Buffy moves over to Ted's desk, peeping her mom's pic, realizing that something's off also. She like double takes that shit, and she's like, "Wait a minute." And I love it too because like obviously we saw that picture on the fridge earlier, and that was them like putting it out there in front of our face later. You don't pay attention to it until this moment. But she opens up the fucking frame, and her half of the picture has been folded back behind, and it's just Joyce sitting there like, "I know they got 5x7s at Dollar General, Ted. You can go over there and buy a fucking picture frame so Buffy and Joyce can be in the picture."
Right.
But this right here puts
hater.
it in front of our face.
I was just so upset, and I was just like, I want to know what the fuck's going on so we can go ahead and get rid of him because I'm done.
Literally. Well, we're getting closer to getting rid of him because it's dinner time. And at dinner, Buffy sits cross-armed across the table. She's just like staring at fucking Ted. And I'm fucking dying because this motherfucker is giving the prayer blessing food. Like, I ain't trying to offend Naj. If you're the biggest Christian in the world, I'm so sorry. But
I'm not religious.
At this point, when I was a kid, definitely not vibing with him because I cannot stand this religious act. So sorry if any of our listeners are that. But like, this is just my side of things. I am not a religious person, so I can't stand when I go to someone's house and they got to have prayer over the food and do all this stuff. I respect it. I'll let you do your thing, but knowing my eyes is going to be open and I'm going to be looking at all of y'all while y'all pray, and I'm just going to go like, Hala Shalom, or like, I'm going to be like, praise Hecate, or like something after y'all say some amen. Like, regardless.
And like his prayer, I mean, like his prayer wasn't even sincere because he was putting genuine shade in it, like shading Buffy while he was doing it. There was nothing holy about this. Like, what are you doing?
It's the most passive aggressive prayer ever. He's like asking God to bless the house and the people in it to be more productive, more considerate, opening his eyes to look directly at Buffy, saying, and more honest. Amen. I was like, oh,
like, wow.
I was like literally me giving the prayer when I'm mad at everybody in the room. Me at Thanksgiving. Catch me on that. He goes on about his great day at work. He's like, another sale day, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But enough about that. It's time to catch Buffy in a lie. How was school today, Buffy? Did you learn anything? This is when your mom, like, knows she got the call from school, like, that you had been acting up all day. And she already knows. And she goes, oh, yeah. And she's like, how was school today, honey? And you're like, oh, it was great. Or, like, whatever. And she's like,
oh,
well,
really? I know you weren't there.
Yeah. She got to whoop that ass. She got that belt ready.
The dinner, she puts the belt on the table.
She's like, here's your food, get ready to eat. I love it too because Buffy's snarky and is like, quite a lot actually. Joyce is obsessed with dinner. She's over here like, Ted, this is great. Buffy thinks it looks good, so Ted explains is not just for looks because she's just staring at it. And he's like, it's to help build strong bodies. It was like, yeah, you said so in your prayer. Buffy just stares and Joyce is like, Buffy? And she's like, are you guys engaged? Just out of like nowhere. And Joyce is like, oh, goodness, no. What gave you that idea? And Ted's like, I'll handle this, Joycey. And as soon as he called her Joycey, I was like, First of all, he's silencing her, telling her to shut the fuck up. He's got this. Like,
exactly.
That's that man of the house vibes. Joyce was speaking. We are feminists over here. You need to let Joyce talk, motherfucker.
Right.
And then he clarifies with Buffy. He's like,
your mother and I are taking it one step at a time. And if things go the way I hope, maybe someday soon I just might ask her to tie the knot. How would you feel about that?
And Buffy just looks down, him stating it's okay to have feelings and to express them. And Buffy was trying to be nice right here and not say shit. And Buffy's like, oh, okay, all right, great then. If that's the case.
I feel like killing myself.
Buffy?
No, I told her to be honest.
She said KMS.
Please tell me you guys as teenagers told your parents at least once, like, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. Because my parents used to get so mad at me when I would say that. They'd be like, we're taking him to the psychiatrist. He needs to go talk to a therapist.
No, like, hell no. If my parents threatened to, or even did take me to the psychiatrist every time I said that, I would be living there still to this day.
No lie.
Like, I use like now. I'd be like, I'm a KMS. Like anytime any convenience come, I'm a KMS myself.
Same.
Literally.
Same. I'm so quick to be crazy about it too. I'm like, that's it. I'm killing myself. I'm done.
And Joyce is stunned by this. And Ted informs her that she should get used to him because, sweetheart, he's not going anywhere. Buffy is over family dinner and she's like, can I be excused? And her mom's like, yeah, to your bedroom, young lady. I was like, ooh. And she's like,
I need to be excused to a different household.
Right. She leaves dinner and Joyce apologizes, him claiming he's salesman of the year and he didn't get that by not being rejected 1,000 times. And he's like, she'll come around. The next shot is so sad too. Buffy's dipped from the house, sitting in the park, swinging on the swing, sadly calling out, vampires, here, vampires, like tapping her stake in her hands too. There's none to slay, and she gets up to head back home. And this is probably one of my favorite scenes of the whole episode because of the tension that's in here. We see her climb back in through her open window to find Ted sitting in her room waiting for her, claiming mom told her to go to her room, not crawl out the window and gallivant around town. And I was like, does Joyce never not go check on her daughter, like whenever she's out slaying vampires and shit? Apparently not. Buffy is like, okay, 1, this is my room. 2, but before she can get out the second statement, she notices that like all her journals, her stakes, her vampire slaying tools, the plethora of everything is all out on top of her desk. He's done went through everything. And she calls him out on it. She's like, did you go through my stuff? He's like, actually, I did. She sternly tells him that that's her personal things. How dare he? But he doesn't see how it's any different than her snooping around his office. He kind of got her there.
Yeah,
like,
he kind of
go snoop around. Now, I mean, he did go through your personal belongings. Like, you're not Joyce. Like, Joyce, he could have pulled her aside and be like, we should go look up in Buffy's room. And maybe Joyce would have some audacity here. But, like, she is snooping around. I mean, you know, it's like, I don't know, pot, kettle, all the energy's there. But we don't side with him. And
yeah, we don't support
at all. And then he opens her diary that he's got in his lap.
What exactly is a vampire slayer?
It's none of your business.
Beg to differ, little lady.
He's like, everything she does is nothing but his business from now on. She thinks his best route is getting the fuck out of there now. Or what, he questions. You'll slay me? I'm not one of these little goblins you've made up in your diary, saying therapists have a word for people like you. Delusional. Having weight over her head now, says from now on she will do everything that he says when he says it, or he will show the diary to her mother, and she will spend the best years of her life behind the walls of a mental institution. Adding, her mother and him are going to be happy. She won't stand in the way. And to sleep tight. He gets all cheery real quick and like goes to leave her room, and she blocks him, grabbing his arm, saying that that is her diary and he is not leaving here with it. He looks down at her, exclaiming for her to take her hand off of him. She firmly is like, no, and he jerks it from her and slaps her so hard that this bitch slams into her closet door, and she stands back up straight to him, claiming,
I was so hoping you'd do that.
Sending a fist to his face, knocking him back into her bedroom door. He backhands her again, knocking her to the floor, moving over to grapple her shoulders when Joyce comes in the door frame. She's like, no, what the fuck's happening? Buffy, stop. I'm like, okay, Ted, stop. You literally walked in on him with his hands on her shoulders, like peeling her up from the floor. You don't know that he didn't attack her first. But also, we get this whole fucking fight scene, which is amazing. She beats his ass up and down every square inch of that hallway. And this obviously all culminates to him getting knocked down the fucking stairs and supposedly getting his neck cracked at the end of the stairs. Joyce runs down and she's like,
You killed him.
Because she checks his pulse, and of course robots don't have pulses. So you would think he would have programmed in there like a little thumpa, so that way if like, you know, the coroner or anything ever happens, he can get away with some bullshit. But no.
Right.
He had to shut down for a little bit. But like this scene, Courtney, when this all unfolded, like what we got.
I was still really confused about what he is in this moment, I think, you know, obviously. And so I started feeling right away the complexity of emotions that they want you to feel with making this point, which is, oh shit, you know, because you don't ever really think about, you're so used to seeing Buffy kill things or vampires or whatever that you almost become like numb to the idea or whatever. You just don't think about her killing a person. And so I think I started like feeling those vibes right away when this happened, because I was just like, oh shit, what if he's real, you know, or what if this is a real thing, and if nothing else and he's not real, what if that's never discovered and she's looked at and charged and like all these things, you know, like from the legality aspect to the rest of it in her personal life and how she'll be judged and looked at and whatever. I was just like, will we ever know what he is?
Yeah.
Like,
so like,
or is this just it? And now she's a murderer. And then, you know, like Joyce got to move her to a different town next and start this whole process all over.
So this part
again.
definitely got you and you were like, shit, she just killed somebody.
I knew the option was there, or I felt like if he wasn't real, I didn't know if they would ever bring that to the surface, you know, because it could have just been as easy as, well, we won't go there yet, you know, and he's dead, so we'll just take the story or the rest of the episode onto the trouble that she faces in having done this act, you know. So I was just like kind of confused about like, even if he's not real, it's real for her in her life, you know, the consequences. Right. So it made me, I instantly got scared for, I was like, oh shit, Buffy's going to jail. Here comes Detective Vaughn.
Oh god. Were you happy, literally though, next scene, were you happy though that she finally beat his fucking ass down, because he was obviously had this coming? Like that's always me this episode, like when this happens, like because I know the outcome of what happens and we all do now, but like when I'm watching it I'm like, yes, fucking pop him in the fucking mouth because he's been asked for this. I'm like, did you want me to slap that smart ass mouth of yours?
But also he put his hand on her first. Like, at this point in self-defense, you shouldn't have touched her in the first place. But I think this whole scene in general, when I first watched it, was that I think I was trying to justify Buffy beating his ass to where he fell down the steps, and I was like, well, he hit her first, so yeah. But then it also kind of like brings the first introduction into the potential blur of lines between superhuman or supernatural and human, because obviously we don't know that Ted at this point is a robot. So if we're watching it from the perspective of, okay, he's a human, so Buffy is kind of wrong for overexerting her strength into beating this man, because she could, obviously Buffy can't control her strength. She's been a Slayer for like 2 to 3 years at this point. So now it's like, okay, well, did Buffy have to go too hard? That brings into the discussion of like, could Buffy have controlled it? And like, even though Buffy has like a kind of authoritative role over the supernatural world of like, killing whatever needs to be killed or threatening humanity, can she use this supernatural role in the human world? And this is like our first introduction of, there is a line, and this was the first instant where it was kind of blurred because she's a Slayer and it's not her authority to beat the shit out of a human as of now. So it brings up a big discussion, because at the time of me watching it, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like at this point, I'm like, I don't care. But then when you get like into the season, like into the show, you're like, yeah, you can't just be beating people to fuck up, even if they're human or not. So
100%. Which is what they were trying to aim to do with the episode too. It is like a good chance for like us to have that opportunity to step back and be like, oh, this is like a position of power. She has overstepped her bounds, because she obviously 2 seconds later, when we found that scene later with her and Willow and Xander, she's like, I had no business hitting him that way and all of that other stuff. So she like calls it, and it's like a good chance for her to like show some responsibility for her actions, and she does take it. But it's just like this whole thing. Later that evening, obviously, we see the coroners are bagging up Ted's body. As a detective asks Joyce what happened, as Buffy sits on the porch in shock, and she tells him that he just fell down the stairs. I love that she takes up for Buffy. She's like, I don't really want my daughter to get in trouble. Like, I'm kind of torn. So, I mean, it was a good move. I'd probably do that for my kid, too, even if, like, I don't know. It really depends on the situation. But Joyce just clearly doesn't know exactly what to do, and she thinks this is her best route. And honestly, I think it is, too, because of everything that happens later. But the detective asks, like, she's like, he slipped. And then Buffy speaks up and she's like, I hit him. Like, I caused this to happen. And then that takes us right over to the police department as Joyce waits while Buffy is questioned by Detective Vaughn himself. And like, she tells him obviously the story about like what happened with Ted in the room and how they got into the argument and how he'd been going through her shit and stuff. And the detective was like, what were you arguing over? And then Buffy doesn't want to tell him and all this, but she did tell him that he had threatened her before, like whenever they were playing golf. And he was like, that was tonight. And she's like, no, that was like another time. And he's like, wait, so you've been hit before and all this other stuff, and you don't seem to like have any marks on you. And she's like, I don't bruise easily. And this kind of sucks for the Slayer's part of this too, because she does not bruise easily. So some quote unquote human hitting her. I mean, we haven't even seen like vampires really like bust her up crazy. So like for Ted to have slapped her and not cause harm, it's sucky in this situation because the cops aren't going to believe her. They're like, there's no evidence, no proof. If she had like a black mark across her cheek, then that could have been like whatever, it is what it is. But she starts getting all jumbled and confused too, because like obviously he's not intentionally, but he's kind of doing that mind game cop bullshit that they do when they're kind of interrogating you and they're trying to like not catch you in a lie, but try to like really get you to tell what's like going on or get you to slip up in some way. And then he reels all that back. So she gets really distressed and he gets a little vulnerable with her. He's like, look, we're not like putting charges on you. He's like, I'm just trying to gather all the facts. But I'm like, also, you're being that douchey cop bag energy, because I'm calling that right now too. Right. And then over with like the detective later, Joyce is talking to him and she's like, are you charging her with something? He's like, no, not at the moment. And he's like, I suggest you guys just go home and get some rest for now, obviously as we investigate more. And the two leave and drive home, and Buffy's looking sad as fuck in that car when Joyce like won't even look over at her either. I was like, ooh, the tension. We go over to the next day at school and Buffy comes in wearing those sad ass pair of overalls, and we'll come to know these as her like overalls of pain in the show, because anytime Buffy's wearing these overalls, we know she's going through some fucking shit. So Courtney, keep an eye out for that in the future.
Noted.
And people are staring at her in the hallway because apparently this is like all over the fucking news or some shit. Xander and Willow come up to her and they ask why she's even at school that day, and she's like, well, I couldn't be home because my mom won't fucking talk to me. And Willow's like, what happened? And Buffy tells him that she hit him. And like they're talking about how the papers put it in the fucking press. I'm like, who the fuck's got time to write about some little 16-year-old girl killing some guy?
Snitched?
Like, is it an obituary for Ted that's coming out? Like, man dies at the hands of 16-year-old. Like, what? I want to read the fucking paper thread. Like, I need that. And Giles has got to have it in the library.
And will they be fired because he actually is not dead? So who lied? Right? Who wrote it?
I know, right? I'm like, who did his autopsy?
The doc.
They didn't know he was a robot.
The chatty doctor.
Right.
that doctor that be telling everybody's information. He also works for the printer pages. That's who released all that information about that little boy that got beat up in the Nightmares episode.
He's a robot too.
Right.
Yes. And I like this too because they arrive on like Xander asking like, well, what was he? And because, you know, obviously he's assuming it's like that he was some kind of creature or something. And Buffy stiffens her lip at this point too to like hold back tears. And I'd never paid that attention before. And Xander's just like, oh man, like, oh God, this is fucked up. Like, he wasn't a monster. And Willow's trying to comfort Buffy, and she's like, well, I'm sure it wasn't your fault. He started it, right? And Buffy obviously doesn't agree, and she's like, well, he was a person, and I killed him. That's all we really need to know. And then we get back on the thing I was saying earlier. I'm a slayer, and I had no business hitting him like that. And Xander obviously tries to console Buffy, saying that she wouldn't hurt anyone, you know, unless something was wrong with them, or if she had actual just reason. And I like Xander for that moment, because he's like a big defender of Buffy in this episode, and this is the reasons why we like Xander in the show, is because he really does always put out like a leg for Buffy. Like, he's always got something. I mean, except earlier when he's trying to like get, you know, good with Ted, but now he's like backtracking everything that he said before. He's like, well, something was wrong with him, right? Like, you know what I mean? So it's good vibes for Xander. And Buffy finishes, unless they were dating my mother, like giving that as the excuse. Like, she's like, I just can't deal at the moment. And she leaves the fucking situation. And she runs into Giles in the hall, who also asks if she's okay. And she asks what's going on, because she takes notice that the detectives are there questioning people in school. And Giles had been one of the people that they questioned. And he's like, of course, I told them all great things. He's like, I didn't mention anything about burning down gyms. Like, and I was laughing to myself, because I was like, where's Snyder this episode? Because he's going to be the first one to throw Buffy under the bus. But he was MIA. But I was like, I know he went and grabbed that file and grabbed out Flutie's like ripped up paper that's got the tape all over it, like to hand them the cops and be like, this is Buffy's file. Like, she's trouble. We know that she did this. I bet she killed 5 other people last night too. Like,
yeah, he would have put the nail in her coffin.
Right. He's her biggest op. I can't.
Literally. I'm so glad he wasn't in this episode though, because we did not have time for his bullshit and shenanigans. I really like that Buffy is experiencing this. And we kind of started to like say this earlier, but like, here is where she starts to take that accountability. So now we can touch base on it a little bit more. I think she's rather mature and like very human to like say that her actions were the form of bad decision making, and then she takes accountability, which honestly, out of all the red flags we're seeing in this episode, this is where we see a bunch of green flags, because Buffy is doing what she should be doing. It's going to be fun to like ponder this in a different way later on down the road and come back to this here in this moment. But I like that Buffy chooses to do this, because most people wouldn't. Most people would lie to get out of it. Like, honestly, if it were me when I was a teenager and I was sitting on that porch, I wouldn't have spoke up and been like, I hit him. I would have been like, yeah, he fell down the stairs. Like, I would have been right up there with Joy's line and getting out of the situation. And then I would have just had an awkward problem, because I mean, I already got problems with my parents. So I'm like, what's one more issue with my mom? She already fucking hates me anyways half the damn time, because I'm always a troublemaker. This is just another thing on the list. I killed her boyfriend, you know, like,
right.
So I would have just rolled with it. And then you wouldn't have had all this bigger investigation stuff going on if that were the case. So I don't know. I'm happy Buffy did this. So in the library, Xander is saying he knows the bastard was up to something to Cordy and Willow. Cordy asking, I thought you liked him. Xander saying back, I sometimes like things that are not good for me. We all know that means you, bitch. Like, nobody else in the room can know, but we know. I was like,
we know your tea. We know your tea.
I caught that. Willow is researching on the computer as Giles packs a bag of weapons. Xander continuing to rag on this whole ordeal, and Willow's got to find something bad about Ted, but finds cookies in his bag. Xander does. And he's like, ooh, cookies. He like starts eating them shits too. I was like, oh, fuck. And Cordy questions like how she doesn't get it. She's like, Buffy's a slayer, shouldn't she have? And then Xander obviously stops her, and he's like, a license to kill. And Cordy's being like, well, not for fun, obviously. And like, she's like Superman or something, so there should be different rules for her, right? And like, I kind of get Cordy's idea of thinking there. She's like, you know, she's above the law in the sense, because she is the slayer. And Willow being like, sure, in a fascist society, aka the America that we currently live under. I was like, God, this episode resonates like a motherfucker right now. Cordy is kind of dumb here too. She's like, yes, exactly, why can't we have one of those? I'm like, we do right now. It's 2025. Charisma Carpenter. Don't you know this? You post about it all the time. Shit was killing me when I wrote this in my notes. I was like, damn. I was like, if I could like send this to her and her not block me like she did Leia, like I would fucking die.
The blocking.
She blocked Leia so quick.
Yeah, I'm like, let's go ahead and open our eyes, Charisma, please.
I thought it was nice that the gang was on board all of a sudden. Like, they threw everything about Ted out of the window, and they're like, we're gonna come through for Buffy and try to find.
Well, yeah, because they haven't been eating his food. He's dead.
The last 2 days, yeah. Well, Xander got him cookies in the bag, so he's about to fuck everybody back up. And they'd be like, no, I know, like, Buffy's a bitch. Like, yeah. Giles obviously adds to the group discussion that Buffy's got to be feeling some kind of unbearable remorse after taking a human life, and it's going to take time for her to be able to deal. And Cordy isn't done offering her remarks to loosely ask,
I guess you should know, since you helped raise that demon that killed that guy that time.
Yes, let's bring that up as often as possible.
Let's read the room.
I was fucking dying. I was
room.
like, what the fuck? But of course Cordelia has this line. And Giles is like, yes, exactly. Bring that up all the time, please. And they discuss, obviously, too, Giles going on patrol in place of Buffy. And, you know, I like this, too, because everybody's like, no, you shouldn't go do that. And Cordelia's even like, can we help you? Like, Cordelia, you about to go out here and slay some vampires? Like, what's happening?
I know, right?
But she's like, we're there for backup. And I was like, okay, I feel the sincerity here. But Giles was like, no, you guys carry on your investigation about Ted. And then obviously he leaves as Willow shouts out that Ted has no criminal record on his file, and she's frustrated. Xander obviously starting to act all cheery because he's been eating them cookies, and like them things obviously kick in fucking quick. I don't know how much drugs he's putting in that for it to be literally 45 seconds since he started eating the cookies, but he's like, it's okay, little buddy, we're good. And I'm like, what?
Like, he tried to sound just like him, like exactly like Ted. That was actually nuts.
But Willow is smart as fuck, and that's where she breaks off this cookie, and she's like, something ain't right. So she's starting to get the dots that she needs to be connected. Over with the Summers girls at the Summers residence, Buffy is trying to talk with her mom in the kitchen, and Joyce is like, I can't talk about this situation right now. I feel bad for Buffy because she's like literally crying and just trying to talk to her fucking mom, and she's like, I didn't mean to hurt him. And when she says that, like, I choke up in my fucking throat for Buffy because I'm just like, I don't know, it's just the admittance that Sarah pulls through in her character too. It's just great acting. But I was like, fuck. And obviously Joyce can't hear this yet. She's like, Buffy, please just go back to your fucking room. I hate seeing Buffy cry because you can feel how she feels, but she just wants to talk and express to her mom how this is affecting her. Not happy with Joyce brushing her off either, like on my side of things. Like, no matter what, it is your job as a parent to listen to your child and at least try to understand, even if she just killed your boyfriend by accident, at least in my opinion, because we could argue she's a person too and might not have words like Joyce. She might not have the words to say to you right now. She's like, let me think on this, let me ponder perception and figure out like how to come and engage with you in this right now. But I feel like you could at least hear everything Buffy needs to say, even if you have nothing to say back, and then tell her to go to her room. You know what I mean? She just like cuts her off. I didn't like it. I was like, I'm more on the side of the fence with the first thing I said. Like, I was curious what you guys thought about Buffy's mom being like just dismissive over her daughter.
Yeah, I tried to figure out if she still was like cookie dose, but I'm assuming it's been like a day or two, so maybe she's not fully like on a high anymore. Yeah, so now she's just very aware, and she's still invalidating Buffy's issues instead of like, listen, I don't even know how long you've been with Ted, Joyce, honestly, so like I can't try to invalidate your feelings and how much you care about him or genuinely like him apparently, but to like witness your daughter potentially could go to jail, could potentially have a case on her, and you're like, I gotta put my feelings first for a man that I barely was with for a couple months over your daughter, your blood, you carried her for 9 months. It's just hard for me to settle because you don't know the term, like the whole eternal turmoil that Buffy is feeling. She's walking through school getting looked at like this is Heather or like this is Easy A, where she's getting side-eyed, and she's walking down there like she got a big ass M on her head, which is I murdered someone. Instead of you understanding what she's feeling, you're just like, I just want to clean up Ted's mess. Just go to your room. Really? I mean, the same room that Ted slept her in? Like, she probably can like reimagine these scenes that she just encountered a day or so or a couple hours ago. You were okay with lying for her, but now you're not wanting to hear her out. Okay, yes. I mean,
yeah, not cool, mom.
That's totally a good point. Yeah, I totally agree, and I just feel like it just carries on that whole theme we've been seeing the whole episode, where Buffy's feelings and emotions are coming last kind of on everyone's list, because at first they were all drugged up and like delusional over Ted, and now that we assume that's not the case because, you know, they're not eating his food or whatever, and we assume they're kind of starting to sober up, that you would think that they would kind of come back to earth a little bit and see more her point. But yeah, for Joyce to just be so dismissive still, and that's kind of like, I think ultimately the underlying trigger here is that Buffy feels dismissed, and so of course like it's only a matter of time before the dismissiveness from everyone, the threats from Ted, and then him actually physically lashing out at her ripple over into what happened. So it's kind of like, why would you carry on the same like trajectory of emotions that started all of this to begin with? You know, you're not doing anything to really heal much of the situation by being this dismissive. And I get that it's soon, you know, of course, like you're not gonna be ready to talk about some trauma 3 hours after it happened, but she could have, just like we said with Jenny and Giles earlier, like Jenny's points were valid, but she could have been a little more gentle, and I feel like that's exactly what Joyce could have done. She could have just been a lot more gentle and not dismissive and not feel like maybe her emotions overshadow or are more important, I guess, in this case than Buffy's is.
Yeah, you said it good.
Well, see, I feel like Jenny and Joyce kind of did parallel each other. I was about to say that when you mentioned also like Jenny's perspective, where like both of them are approaching the situation in like the worst way, but by the end of the episode, they obviously like both recounsel like and discuss like what they initially were feeling and how like kind of giving a better take on it. But obviously Jenny does it better in first. But I guess at this point, this is where Joyce starts to like process it and realize like maybe I shouldn't be harsh on my daughter. But watching it, it's just so frustrating because at this point, it's like the premise of this episode is to just punch down that Buffy's wrong. She excreted too much supernatural strength. She's wrong. Which yes, but it's like, when will it be in and out of character for Joyce to just sit there and act like she don't know what's about to happen if they drop the case or not? Like, come on now.
Totally. Yeah.
We cut over to the science lab at school, and Willow is testing the cookies and finds that the secret ingredient is not love. It's actually dimethorine, a drug that keeps you mellow and compliant, sharing components with ecstasy. Xander awards her on finding evidence against Ted. Willow's the best human ever. We adore her. And it's just not the cookies talking. You rock. I like how he had to admit that. He's like, it's not the cookies, I promise. Cordy comes in saying that she finally found some files on Ted, marriage certificates, and an address, and they all file out to go check the residence. Over at the park, Giles patrolling, feeling sketched, and he is spooked by someone behind him, turning to place a cross in their face, only to see that it's Jenny, who just states to him,
"Hey, I get that reaction from men all the time."
Jenny.
Fucking hilarious. He's relieved that it's just her, wondering why she's there, who saw his car and wanted to apologize to him because, she feels all sorts of awful. And he's like, well, now's not the best time. And she claims that she really just needs to get this out, saying she was harsh the other day and is sorry, knowing he must feel badly about putting her in danger before. And then, like, this sucks for the timing of her fucking sentence because he looks past her and behind her stating, well, imagine how I must feel now, as we see a vampire snarling behind this bitch. And she turns around seeing it and they both look on with dread. And then like it cuts out. I'm like, oh God, what's about to happen here? Like, I love that they start to have this makeup energy. I'm like, this is the moment where we can like release some of that negativity we were feeling for fucking Jenny earlier, because she's coming through here. She's had some time to think on some things. And obviously we get some more that's going to come from that. But we clip from that scene over to Buffy's room, where we hear a door open and Buffy calls out for her mom and there's no answer. And she's like, to hell with sitting here. And she goes over to her window and she's got that fucking shit nailed shut. I love that too. She's like, she nailed it shut. And I'm like, did she though? Like, did Joyce really go out there and nail that fucking door shut? Like, dude,
or did Ted?
Could have been. I mean, if he had the time, I don't know when he tapped it. Whenever she's been in her room this whole day. Like, one time she's actually in her room. I'm surprised she didn't leave before this. But like, first of all, if you wanted to leave, go out the front door, because your mom might not actually hear you leave. But two, didn't we watch you take a fucking box in Witch, I think, whenever she comes in the kitchen? Whenever she comes in the kitchen and Joyce is trying to crowbar the fucking box that's got all the nails in it, and Buffy just with 3 fingertips peels it off like it's nothing. Buffy, you could have just yagged out that window right the fuck up.
Not you clocking her.
She was too shocked though, I think, in this moment. She's like, fuck, like, well, I'm not gonna press this issue and sneak out now and like break the window open because she might hear this and come the fuck up. She's like, whatever. And then she says to herself, well, this day can't officially get any worse. And then Ted steps up from behind her into frame, honestly giving Michael Myers, because like the way he just kind of pans over, I was like, look at this motherfucker, Halloween. And then he just says his classic phrase,
beg to differ.
Line hit. What did you think, Courtney, whenever this motherfucker reappeared?
It really kind of reaffirmed my initial thing where I said I thought he was a zombie. So of course I'm like, oh shit, I think he's a zombie, like for real, because here he is risen from the fucking dead. But yeah, I was scared. But the point of most of all that I was looking forward to after seeing him, I was like, I cannot wait to see Joyce's face when she sees this motherfucker alive, and she gotta really stare this red flag down, you know what I mean? Because I don't know how you can ignore this one or justify it or not be creeped out or not be scared or not want to run away or not want to kill yourself,
which she wants to do in 3 minutes whenever Ted comes downstairs. Like, she's like, wait, hold up. It starts to grow, and then she does start to do all the things that you literally just named out. So like, it's interesting, but she looks to Ted and she's like, you died. And he's like, that's right, little lady, you killed me. Do we have something to say? Are we sorry? And she just exclaims, what are you? He's like,
I'm a salesman. That's what you should have remembered. No matter how you put him down, A good salesman always bounces back.
Grabbing Buffy and slinging her across the fucking room, finishing, a good salesman always bounces back. Back over in the park, the vampire is attacking, and Jenny jumps out of the way as he pounces Giles, screaming to Jenny. He's like, my bags, like, as he's struggling over there. And Jenny grabs out the damn crossbow, aiming it like she's Buffy in the first episode or whatever, like episode Angel, like she's fucking aiming the crossbow and she can't hit anything. And she's over here setting it, trying to get the time for the right shot. I love how it's going from like the drama that's happening over with Buffy and Ted, and then it keeps clipping back over to like what's happening with Giles and Jenny too, because we cut right back over to Buffy's room, and she's in hand-to-hand combat with Ted again. He's starting to choke the fuck out of her. He's like, you should have seen the intern's face when I got off the table. It was a hoot. Like, oh my god.
Like, what? He just traumatized people. He like, anyways, let's clock into choking Buffy and getting my wife. Like, are you serious, sir?
I go right back over to the park, and Giles is struggling, and he finally gets back up to his feet though, and Jenny thinks that she's got the mark to hit her shot, and she says with confidence, she's like, say goodnight, big guy, and then shoots the crossbow bolt, and the vampire spins Giles around, and the fucking bolt embeds into Giles' back. I love that. And then she starts rifling through the bag again for another weapon as the vampire laughs out, and he's maniacally saying, he's like, nice shot, lady. And then Giles is smart as fucking just rips the bolt out of his back and embeds it in the vampire. And then obviously we get yet another 2K to vampires per slay this episode, because we got actual dust. Wasn't an off-screen slay. Giles he killed a vampire last episode with a crossbow, and then now he's in this one again slaying a motherfucker. So I guess he is good to go on patrol. And thankfully Jenny takes a breath of relief. She's like, oh my god, thank god this vampire's dead, we're safe. Back over to Buffy and Ted, and he's still choking her, and he gets stabbed with the nail file, and it causes a gash in his arm, and electricity starts protruding from it, or electricity and like wires and shit. And he's like claiming that that's not playing fair, Missy, and starting to glitch out too, because like he starts speaking gibberish and shit. And then he hears Joyce downstairs and kicks Buffy down to the floor, knocking her out. He leaves Buffy unconscious to go downstairs and deal with Joyce. But I have to stop right here for obviously 2 seconds for like Ted being a robot and you having this clarity. Like whenever you finally saw that gash and the fucking wires and stuff like that, where you're like, oh.
Yeah, I literally felt stupid because I was like, oh, yeah.
He's a zombie.
He does computers and like, duh. You know, right? Like I felt really dumb. I felt like I had his cookies the whole episode. But yeah, it was a good surprise, but also a good way to make me feel dumb because I was like, it was so obvious the whole time.
Right? And the show does that, and it's very clever.
They have like, didn't he have like, he said like earlier this episode, I'm not wired that way, but I don't think I even processed that either. It's like I was just like, oh well, like I already didn't care about you getting beat up before, so you can definitely get ate up right now. That's pretty much how I felt. So I was like, well then we don't have nothing to waste. We ain't gotta waste no time. Let's go ahead and get this ass whooping.
Literally, if you're actually one of those people that hyper focus on shit and really can pay it that much attention,
then
you probably already are catching on to the fact that he might be a robot, especially when he reappears in Buffy's room.
Yeah, it's not obvious, but it is when you get the reveal and you're like, oh, well, no fucking shit. All of the breadcrumbs were there.
Yeah, right. Something unexpected is always going down on the Hellmouth. Something crazy. And this is the coolest way to do like the robot trope on Buffy, is to have like the monster of the week be a fucking robot. Like in the way they put the whole premise in the episode together, it's really nicely done.
And I like when they take a long time to kind of reveal it, and I feel like this was one of those like longer stretched out episodes before like you really get the full reveal of who and what Ted is, because there's other episodes like you find out pretty soon with like Miss French and all these other ones where it's like pretty quickly into the episode you're like, oh well, no shit, this is like the praying mantis lady or whatever. You know, but this one was like, oh, we're gonna go up until like 8 minutes before close, and then let you know. Like,
yeah, for real. Yeah. Most of the time, it is revealed very early on for the audience to know what's going on, and we're waiting for the Scoobies to like all catch up to that. Yeah,
but now it's like we were all on that journey where we're like connecting the dots later, and we're like, oh, okay, duh.
Courtney said, "I felt stupid."
I did.
You're not done, mate. No Dematorium for you. Well, over at the residence that the gang are checking out, they break in and Xander's like, check for cookies, and he's like, for evidence. like bruh, you know you want to eat one more of them things. Like I'd be stockpiling them too if I knew they were edibles. You better gotta keep them shits away from Joyce, because she can be like, even though Ted's gone, like, can I get a prescription for Dematorin? Like Willow stating in the files that she's counted 4 marriage certificates of Ted's, no divorce papers, wigging out because one of them is from 1957, preschool age for him as well. And she's like, what the fuck? Like he would have literally been like 3 years old whenever he got married. I don't understand that. So like they're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And Cordy calls out how it doesn't look like anybody's been there in a while. And Xander's saying that this place doesn't scream Ted, and it doesn't, just like looks like a workshop or something like that. And Cordy calls out the fucking rug in the room beneath their feet. And obviously they like pull the rug back, and they see underneath it that there's a hatch in the floor. And they're like, oh, we got to go down there. Back over at the Summers residence, Joyce packs up some boxes in the kitchen, still on her cleaning tangent that she's been on. We hear a creak, and then she's like, Buffy, I'm sorry for what I did earlier, blah, blah, blah. And then she spins around to see that it's fucking Ted standing there. And she's like, literally taken aback, like jump scare, but also the surprise. Like for us to see like a little bit of a dip into Christine Sutherland's acting, like her, like, portraying being taken aback and all those emotions, like what you just said, what I said, like kind of unfolding for her. She really played that out pretty well. And we don't really see that. The worst we've ever seen from her is when she knocked Spike in the fucking head with the axe. So like, you know what I mean? That is what it is. But she's just like, what the fuck's happening? And he explains to her that they said that he had only been dead for like 6 minutes, and longer than that he could have got brain damage, but other than that he's okay. And she's like, it's a miracle you're alive. And they hug, and she swears Buffy didn't mean to do it. And obviously she's like trying to be an advocate for Buffy right here. She's like, I'm so sorry my daughter like kicked your fucking ass. She's like, you probably deserved it, but it is what it is, like whatever. She's like, I understand if you want to break up, like whatever. And then he just pulls her in against his chest, and he's like, don't worry, daddy's here. And I'm like, no,
right, absolutely not.
Can't be vibing with it.
Xander Usher. Like, why would he say daddy's home? Like, what are we talking about? Oh, yes. Bring realism to this podcast. We love to see it.
Xander and the gang move down below the shop, and they find 50 Psycho style setup down there. Like, as soon as they flip the switch on, the fucking like record player comes on. Willow, I like her little moment too. She goes over there to like look behind the curtains, and it's like bricks on the opposing side. I was like, damn, like there ain't nothing there. Why is the window even there? Like, they're underground. Like, also, this is California. There ain't no basements in California. What the fuck? There's earthquakes all the time. Like, no one got a basement. They act like it's like up north or some shit. Xander goes over and checks in the closet when he's there, and he is like horrified. Obviously we get the point of view from him looking in the closet, and he like shuts the door really quick, and he's like, let's get out of here. And Cordy is like, we need evidence though, and he's like, we got it, and hesitates for a second. And Willow's like, what's in there? And Xander's like, his first 4 wives. That could trip me the fuck out. I remember that from the first time watching the show, because I was like, there's fucking dead bodies in there, like what? Right. And like, to me, this is where I'm getting on the tangent I was almost about to go on earlier. How in the fuck is there not a rank smell in that place? I know they're probably skeletons by this point, because the last person's been dead for at least 10 years or so, like that, whatever. The smell's possibly dissipated, or Ted's been down there, like, you know, keeping it clean and fancy looking, spraying Febreze, whatever. Like, but he just put them in the closet and left them there. Like, they're not embalmed, anything like that. He's a robot, so he can't smell anything. But he just straight up said, well, I'm going to lock you down here with me, and you're not going to be able to overpower me. I'm going to keep you doped up on Damatorin all the fucking time, apparently. And, like, I don't know what that does to a person's psyche, knowing that they're trapped.
My question is this, though. If he's replacing his wives every decade, what's happening to them?
That's what I'm saying. They're just down there chilling. Right. He's down there with them, because obviously he's not just locking them up down there and leaving. Because he obviously killed them. Like, that's the only thing I got. He killed them. So I'm just like, what are you doing?
Well, I'm so like, do they still go out to cook,
I'm like, are they still alive?
Because well, he's got to be. He's a fucking 4-star culinary chef, Gordon Tedsey over here. Oh, so true. Like, is he like does everything? He's cooking them, doing all the things, but I think eventually they just go into distress. Probably either that or he's starving them, because once he's got what he's got, he just keeps them down there, and eventually like. Maybe he doesn't feed them. Maybe he becomes negligent. Like, these are story particles that are just like kind of missing from that thing. Because obviously they would have lasted a lot longer with him being a fucking, like, if he's actually like, you know, maybe chaining them up or something like that and leaving them down there and then going out there to go to the grocery store and get food or do whatever, charge his batteries and stuff like that. That's the only time he's probably inactive, unless he's got like a fucking, you know, permanent charge on his battery. Like, I don't know. It's just a lot of questions, which this show is like horrible with doing and creating for us. And like, we're stuck with this.
Unless he has like an infinite load of like snacks of every type, where he got breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like how he's trying to like basically feed Joyce constantly with stuff. Unless he's doing that and she's just being obedient, obviously, since she's eating all his meals until she literally dies of old age. That's the only way I can logically think of her actually staying with this man without getting creeped out. And especially with him, I'm like, it's even more weirder, because I'm just like, every decade, obviously, like the mindset of a woman thinking is going to change from like this submissive woman to like wanting to do her own thing. At some point, maybe as the years or decades progressed, he started to tweak out at how like unsubmissive they were, and then probably started killing them quicker than anything. Because
maybe he killed him because of that, though. Maybe that, like, I was gonna like do the conspiracies with Courtney gig, because Courtney has this whole thing that we're gonna do every now and again where she just like fucking comes up with
Courtney's
something.
conspiracies.
But my Courtney conspiracy, Brandon's conspiracy this episode, I guess because of what you just said, Naj, maybe he is like going on for a long spectrum of time. Maybe he didn't lock all of them down there. Maybe he lived a little bit of life with them, and like some span of time went by before, like you said, he started to unfold and like his true colors started to reside, and then he had to dispose of them and go find the next one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then he just shoved the first one in the closet and down there. But by the time he takes the second one down there to show him the house or whatever, like, because obviously he's got to be like, I got somewhere I'm living, like this is it, and like why is it down in a hatch in my bed? So like, was he just always staying at the person's house? Like,
well, he has them drugged up, you know, so at that point they're just like,
this is just like a vicious cycle of confusion. I'm just saying, like, we tried to explain it and we just cannot. So I'm sorry, people that are listening, we have no fucking answers
really,
for you.
it would have solved all the problems for me if they just showed us a glimpse into the closet. That's really just the only thing. I'm like, are they skeletons? Are they decomposing bodies? Are they mannequins? And he dreamed up the whole thing because he's fucking high. Like, there's so many questions, but my primary one was, why are you replacing them every 10 years? What the fuck is happening? Because women live longer than 10 years.
And
so
are they lasting 10 years?
Yeah, and I'm like, and after the first wife you snatched up, you should have been good to go for life because you're already how fucking old. So I'm like, what's going on?
Literally. I don't fucking know. My guess is, like, honestly, and I'm gonna seal it up at this, is that like he had the first one and he like kept her for a while and like everything was fine, but then shit just went kind of south, and then that's when he started to do the process, because obviously it was the robot that came back up and stuff like that, and somehow he slipped, somehow somebody got fired. Like maybe the second one found out he was a robot too soon, he had to dispose of her. Then the third one, some other issue happened, and they just all ended up in the closet. So that's where he is. We're going right back to Summer's house because Ted is over here telling Joyce that what brought him back was her. He couldn't go into the light. He had to come back to her, promising to make her happy. And Joyce just thinks that he should sit down for a little bit because he's not looking fine. He's like, I feel fine. He's like, never better, actually. And she goes on about how she should talk to Buffy before she sees him. And he gets snappy to be like, do we have to worry about Buffy right now? Like smack himself or some shit. He's like, what about Teddy? He's the one who died. And I'm like, like, calm down. And this is the moment where, like Courtney was saying, Joyce is like going off on the rails. She's like, wait a minute, hold up. Finally, the red flags are popping. I'm not on the cookies no more. It's been a few days since you've been gone. Like, she apologizes and states that she doesn't know what to do, but that's irrelevant because he claims, don't I always tell you what to do? And I'm like, okay, 50s misogyny coming through. Also, that he's going to make things right, that he and her, but then he glitches and he's like fucking talking about gravy and shit. And she's like, what? And then he finishes the original line and he's like, we can go away and no one will ever bother us again. Finally, Joyce is concerned enough and looks at him with like disillusion. And she's like, bro, what the fuck is wrong with you? Offering again the idea of him resting for a little while. But he thinks that she might want to stop telling him what to do. And he doesn't take orders from women. He's not wired that way. And then he glitches out some more. We flash to Jenny and she's apologizing that she hurt Giles, who thinks he himself is rather all right, but she thinks that he's in shock. And he's like, no, the tweed jacket, it's like fucking got my back, literally. He's like, I don't think it allowed it to go too deep. And I'm like, well, thank God this motherfucker is always wearing some tweed. And he's like, but I probably should go to the hospital. So that's their next destination. And Jenny starts giggling to herself as they like walk off. And he wonders what the fuck is so funny. And she's like, some night, huh? You really know how to woo a girl back. And he begins to laugh, but this hurts too much for him to do so. He's like, so back on track. Let's get to the hospital. Back at the Summers house, Buffy is waking up in her room and Joyce is proposing a drink to celebrate. Like, this bitch is like, let's drink. Ted's saying that she should probably be hitting the road, actually. And she's like, what? And he states that she's gonna love the house. It's furnished the way she likes it, and she's gonna like be spending a lot of time over there. And he starts glitching again as well, and she gets fucking scared, but tries to avoid him by saying she better go pack then. And he's like, no, I have all your clothes already. And like, they're all your size. They're always your size. And I'm like, do you find a woman that's like always like, 5'9", fucking 122 pounds? Like,
and petite, I guess.
I don't know. He's got a type, to say the least. I want to, this is the part where I want to see the dead bodies in the closet. Cause I want to see if they all look kind of like Joyce.
You're like, are they all the same
all
size?
Blonde, curly bowed, like bounced up hair, all the things. And then he makes like a comment about like he always brings her back, and he's like, husband and wife is forever, and he's like glitching again. He's like, forever, and I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck is happening? Like, this motherfucker is shorting out. Like, Buffy done did too much. Like, I don't know if all the wires in his arm that runs his fucking motor skills in his head was all there. Like, whatever.
Right? I'm like, what? I'm like, is that the only ones? Like, I would think it would be more than just that little rip.
Upstairs, obviously, we see Buffy rip her fucking door clear off the damn hinges. Like, she just busts that shit open, and Ted hears it, and he's like, come on, Joyce, we gotta go. And she like gets punched back into the fucking wall by him because he just shoves her because she's like, no, I'm not going with you. And he's like, fine, I'll have to carry you after she passes out. I'm like, no. He like goes to pick her up and he hears the creaking and he's like, oh fuck. And then obviously we get that whole moment where he's like walking around the house looking for Buffy and he's like,
Buffy, come out. I don't stand for this kind of malarkey in my house.
And this bitch appears behind him delivering an uppercut with the fucking cast iron skillet, adding
This house is mine.
Claim it, please.
Yes, and obviously this gives us the like air that the cast iron skillet earlier was brought up for a reason because it was going to be the weapon of choice to destroy fucking Ted. He turns over looking to her as we see his face is fucking ripped open, exposing half of his robot face. This makeup that they did for here was awesome. Like I like the fact that his teeth are kind of exposed. Like it's really gnarly looking. The way that like a Slayer hitting him like peeled his fucking face back, like cool as shit.
Especially with how big and thick, like a cast iron is very like, you know, hefty. So she hit shot at that man. But even like in the 90s, like I think the graphics and detail and CGI, whatever they did for the robot was amazing back then. Like I was like, wow, this looks actually like a robot person if it really was.
Yeah.
So I gotta give 10s for that.
I know that shit was uncomfortable because they had to like put that wedge and mold his face probably just to get it to like cleft lip kind of thing. Like that had to been like, weird. Like obviously I'm sure he was like drooling in between takes or had like a straw that he had to put in his mouth to suck like the dentist had,
like
you know?
sucking it out like a dentist.
Yeah, but thankfully Buffy smashes him. I love it. Buffy smashes him over the head with it once more, and he collapses to the floor, twitching and shorting out, obviously saying some weird shit. But Ted is fucking out of here. We ain't got Ted no more. He dead on the floor. He's a robot no more. He's gone.
He's gone.
Claps by Ted.
He's gone.
The next day, we find Buffy on the porch enjoying the day with her mom, snacking as she asks Buffy if she wants to rent a movie that night. And she's just like, nothing with horror in it, or romance, or like anything. We should actually not watch anything. Buffy's like, we can watch Thelma and Louise, though. And I was like, oh, cute. And then Joyce is all talking about she like feels how Ted's going to jump out at her. And especially after what the police found in her home. Obviously, this gives us the allude of like what happened with the police and stuff. And thankfully, the gang came through and stuff to like give all that information. And Buffy confirmed Ted is definitely not coming back. And she's like, he's on the scrap heap. And like, I'm like, fun little clever joke. But like, I never really realized until this take that Joyce did not know that he was a robot. They like, she was obviously unconscious in the wall. They got Ted out of there. Buffy had to come up with some lie like about that he like skipped town or something, ran out the house, and they're never going to hear from him again. Like, why wouldn't you just be like, Mom, like, it's not a vampire or a demon or something like that. You just be like, this motherfucker was a robot. Like, Mom, you were dating a robot. And then maybe Joyce would ease back on some of the bullshit she gives Buffy sometimes because she brought home a crazy person in the house.
Totally.
Like,
especially because we're not living in the era of Joyce not knowing Buffy's identity. So it's kind of like Joyce has already been exposed to some bullshit that most people wouldn't believe if you're just telling them about it. So for her to know all these things, I would think that Buffy would very easily be like, by the way, Mom, this guy wasn't real, so LOL on you. Like,
I don't fucking know. But one of those other things we don't have fucking explained in the damn episode.
Right, because how did they find, did they like find the body or did they hide the body? Like,
they obviously didn't show it to the police. Like, obviously, Joyce would have had to back up and be like,
she must have literally thrown him on the scrap.
The intern didn't get killed. So, like, the intern told the cops that, like, he beat me up and got off the table. So, clearly he wasn't dead. And then Buffy and Joyce have the, like, joint effort of saying he came to our house and attacked us. Buffy fought him a little again and then he ran off. Like, I guess that's the story that they went with. And that's why they told Joyce. But we don't know because they don't tell
any
us.
other victims.
Well, and then didn't they say, like, the police found whatever,
the evidence in his house. Yeah. So I mean, it helps to clear her of the charges and like let them know that Ted was obviously up to shady shit. He killed all these people and, you know, the address was his.
And so maybe Joyce thinks he's in prison or something, you know.
I don't fucking, well, then she wouldn't be thinking that he's going to jump out from any corner. I don't fucking know. I'm going to quit watching this show because it's upsetting. Just kidding.
Too many questions.
Okay, well, we're done with the questions. We're going to go to school the next day where Xander is there professing the story of Ted to everybody and letting everybody know that, like, what was happening. You know, guy does all the things that we've been saying. We all know that Ted did what he did with all the wives, kept doing it and bringing her back, all that good shit. And they call it creepy on a whole other level. Willow claiming he was a genius, though, talking about the parts for the robot to him. Buffy's like, you didn't keep any, did she? And she's like, not any big ones. So, like, she disassembled this motherfucker and kept the parts. Like,
okay.
Like, Willow, what are you doing with those? Like, They just want to drop the subject, though, like we do, which Buffy is excited for. She plans to forget the whole thing and pick up right where they left off. And then the gang arrives at the library, barely making it inside, to turn right back around. And I love how Buffy like throws her hands up. She's like, "That's it, I give up." And Willow and her like look shocked as they like run off. And Buffy's saying, "Do I have to sound a horn every time I walk into a room?" And she's like, "What is up with grown-ups these days?" And then Xander and Cordelia have that little cute moment where they look through the window in the room and they smile at each other and then kind of giggle and run off after Buffy and Willow. And then us, the audience, gets to see, as the camera pans in through the window, we see Giles and Jenny are kissing passionately in the library. We fade to black and here into the episode on a beautiful note.
Mm-hmm.
And I fucking love it. Like I said earlier, I was literally like tearing up when I saw it, because I was just like, "Oh, Jenny and Giles." I was like, they're gonna get married like Courtney wants, and they're just gonna live a happily ever after life, and like now we don't have to worry about the problems. Like, it's all great. I love it.
Happy ever after.
I feel like I have the easiest closing thoughts ever, because I've said so much about this episode, but like mostly all I had to say in my closing thoughts was like ending scene. Like, I just love that fucking scene, because you know, we needed this close up energy. For themes and metaphor, I actually have that like tie-in on themes here, because obviously I feel like there's more theme versus metaphor in this episode, because obviously metaphor for the episode could be like the stuff I said earlier about the slasher film trope, the like home invader, all the stuff about like, you know, the dad beating up the mom and the child, all that type of stuff is kind of sprinkled in there. But in Mark Field's book, he has the same route and mindset, and the point that Buffy is taking out her emotions this way in real life would be a highly dangerous situation for her, especially with the scene of her pummeling the vampire. She should have backed off of Ted when she had the upper hand, because it was warranted why she attacked him back. Obviously, she could have hit him that one time and she could have been like done, but she took it the extra mile and like beat his ass all the way down the hallway because she couldn't handle her emotions. And this grown-ass man invaded a 16-year-old space, trapped her in her room, and then assaulted her. So yes, again, warranted. But Ted wasn't human, though, and she sensed something was wrong with him, and her instincts are very good. Noting those instincts might have guided her reactions, especially after the golf course incidents, confirming her suspicions, because that's where it all tailed off after that. When he punched her to the ground, that was a moment to where she felt he was a bit more than human due to the strength of the blow. Buffy's own issues did affect her reaction. Interesting enough, this episode shows Buffy at risk of demonizing a person simply because she's upset by the situation. That's dangerous in a person, much more in a Slayer, in a way of the flip side of the coin from What's My Line, where Buffy encouraged Kendra to use her anger as a weapon. You know, like, this is a dangerous atmosphere for a Slayer to be getting into. What really vindicates Buffy is her willingness to take full responsibility for what she's done. When Buffy accepted her destiny of the Slayer, she had to accept the consequences of her actions as the Slayer. This is the first time we see Buffy misuse her power, but she passes an important test by taking full responsibility of her actions. Tracy Little in High School is Hell, a book, metaphor made literal in Buffy, comments that season 2 includes a constant theme. You're not the person I thought you were. We've already seen in Inca Mummy Girl, Ampada is not at all who Xander thinks or anyone thinks, and Reptile Boy, the frat boys are not who Buffy and Cordelia thinks they are, and in Lie to Me, Buffy's old friend Ford is not who she thought. We even saw Giles in the Dark Age. Buffy doesn't recognize Giles, she says. Like, she's like, you know, don't be sorry, be Giles. And here Ted is clearly not either who Joyce or Buffy thought that he was. There's a big thing going on here about people not really being who they portray themselves to be, and I thought that was really interesting that Ted is a part of the theme for this season, and this is where we start to branch that open. But that's pretty much where I'm going to leave that. But right now, I'm going to hit y'all with the fun facts. Ted's ability as a cook was probably a joke and nod to his Three's Company role, who was a culinary student on the show, which I didn't know because, like I said, I didn't watch Three's Company. So they probably made him a culinary artist in this because of that. Willow's reference of keeping robot parts is a nod to the movie The Terminator 2. Thelma and Louise is the perfect movie after a day of dealing with abusive men. And then I was like, technically, by the means of this episode, y'all have seen that Christina Ricci and Charlize Theron movie Monster, where they like kill the men that are doing them wrong and shit. I was like, that's technically the movie Buffy and her mom should like close on tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
During the episode, Ted and other characters use specific language to tease the audience about Ted's robot personality. Ted uses the phrase, "I'm not wired that way," a couple of times. An employee at Ted's work describes him as the machine, and Joyce tells Ted that every home should have one of him, implying that he is like a house robot. Kind of like that bitch from the Jetsons that's always like running around helping the people. I ain't ever watched the Jetsons like that, but I remember that fucking robot lady. According to David Fury, when he questioned the amazing technological abilities of Sunnydale residents, because he was asking like, how the fuck, like, how would Sunnydale have this? And Joss was just like, bro, you're overthinking it. The Hellmouth should be able to provide us with literally anything that we want to do. And he's like, the energy that comes out of it is like mad scientists out of humans. Like, we had in some assembly required and all of that type of stuff. He's like, just deal with it. Because apparently he was like really arguing the fact about this fucking robot shit. He was like, bro, we can't have this on Buffy. And he was like, yes, we can. Ted was shot during the Halloween holiday. Many members of the cast and crew came to set in costume. Apparently Christine Sutherland, who plays Joyce, wore a 1950s clothing outfit that was like representative of Ted's first wife to make a joke. And Sarah Michelle Gellar came as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, along with her dog dressed as Toto, which I thought was really cute. And then my last fun fact, during the filming of the final confrontation between Buffy and Ted, both Sarah Michelle Gellar and John Ritter were ill. Gellar had the flu and Ritter had food poisoning from the night before. So all the final scenes we see of them, that's why Buffy actually looks a little sick this episode, because she actually has the flu half of it. That's why she does it so well. And then obviously like he acts differently and looks a little weird if you really go back and watch it. Like he's got food poisoning, so he's like running to the bathroom every 2 seconds to shit his brains out. All right, cool. Well, we can close up and finish up and get into our final slays. Final slays with Courtney and Naj. Just A. Okay, what were you guys' quotes from the episode?
One of mine, and I'm actually glad that you didn't even go over this part at all, so I can be the one to bring it up, because the moment with Giles and Jenny where Jenny's being a complete asshole that we all unanimously agree on, Giles, when he comes to her with the excuse and she like calls him out about making up an excuse to come see her, and she's like, that's a pretty good excuse. I love when he responds and he said, you should have heard the ones I threw out, because I just thought that was the sweetest. I was like, look at Giles, like literally not just fessing up to the fact that he had an excuse, but basically that he had like a whole list of excuses he was practicing before he walked into her room to be like, hey, I need your attention.
Literally.
Mine's just Willow saying, well, apparently the secret ingredient is not love, because we're like, oh, you know, Ted know how to cook. Apparently, no, he don't. He's like to sprinkle some shit in there and get it off. I had Cordelia when she was like, but she's like Superman. Shouldn't there be different rules for her? When she was trying to justify Buffy, DDT, and Ted, I was like, she kind of real bad.
My quote was Angel whenever he's like, so you're going to talk about something else at some point? Like, that shit just gets me every time. I'm just like, because Buffy's on this tangent. And he's like, bitch, do you realize that you're doing the same thing? All you doing is talking about him. I need you to shut the fuck up and kiss me. And then I do have a second one. I like whenever Xander is like, can you say overreacting? And then Buffy comes back with her banter and she's like, can you say sucking chest wound? Because she about to beat the fuck out of Xander after, because she said that way after he did that shit to her earlier when he threw her under the bus. And I was like, she coming for your neck, Xander, you better watch out.
Xander had one more time to piss her off. He was about to be the next one getting a two-piece. That's just...
So for Shining Slayer, mine, of course, obviously Buffy defeated Ted, but we can't make it that easy. So for me, I gotta give it for the first time ever to Cordelia. Not only does she find the address, she's the one who pointed out the rug, which led them downstairs, which obviously led them to the bodies, which led the police to the bodies, which led to Buffy's name being cleared of all charges. If Cordelia was not Cordelia and she didn't be like, what's up with this ugly ass rug that does not go with everything else, they would have breezed right over it and been like, we found no evidence here, let's leave. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So I gave it to Cordelia.
I agree. Same here.
Cool. Yeah, I had her. I also had Willow as another potential one, because due to her noticing like Xander eating that cookie and like switching his whole attitude within like that couple of seconds, she was like, okay, well, let me actually look into these cookies. And then she was able to find out like a reason to have suspicion about him fully, so they can go and investigate his house anyways. Yeah. Because like at this point they were kind of like, he's odd, but we don't know why. And then once they found out about the cookies, they were like, okay, well, we can at least put this on him for being weird. So
absolutely,
I'll give her that.
That's true. Yeah.
What was giving you guys the weekly wigs?
Ted, just simply Ted. I like between Ted and like the cop that's like gaslighting the shit out of us and Buffy, I just couldn't decide which one was worse. Like, you imagine sitting here with this like older man just like, are you sure you got slapped? Maybe it was just a regular thing, you know. He kind of let you slide with that. What? What are we talking about?
Yeah,
like,
totally agree.
So mine's Ted also. Literally, obviously, we all collectively have to choose Ted. But mine wasn't just really Ted, it was his misogyny. Because when he told Joyce, like, I don't take orders from women, all the 1950s bullshit, I was like, just the premise of fuck that America, because, ugh. But also his praying at the dinner table, like, takes the cake for me, honestly. So. Yeah.
That's a good point. I think the time he like really gave me the most wigged out moment is when he's hugging Joyce and he's like, "It's okay, Daddy's here."
Yes.
And I'm like, "Oh,
Like
please
if you had just
die
said it
already."
a little differently, you'd been like, "Daddy's here." Like I would have been like, "Ooh, Daddy!" Like what? Like he just wasn't. He didn't know how to. Like 1950s men did not know nothing about how to turn a bitch. Like
well, he was a robot too, so you know emotions are null and void.
Very, very true. 100%. Okay.
A Rizless robot. Wow.
The Riz of the robot. The robot Riz. He did not have it. The robot Riz.
Joyce ate it up though.
Damn.
That's the crazy part.
She
Joyce
ate us up.
She
did. She got a robot dick. She did not though. But like, what do you think his tongue tastes like? Like, she obviously was making out with him and macking him hard. Do you think she was just throwing on them lips? Like, what is he made out of? Is he like
She's
that?
like, ooh, it's kind of
silicone. That, you know, he had that good thing down there. He had that fucking that $89.99 Amazon Prime. Like, it vibrated and everything. Push a button. He's like,
right. He was the only person to vibrate the tongue going like a motorboat.
Okay, I'm sad.
I know.
Okay.
She was gagged.
I have to literally. She was about to be gagged. I know them other three bitches. She's got to get pushed in that closet. And she'd be like, "Why? Who are these other four bitches? So what's happened?" Okay, I'm dead. Now we getting goofy.
He's like, "That's why I need 4 wives."
Yeah, we've been here too long. We getting goofy. Our final part of Final Slayerette predictions. Obviously, I don't have anything to really gaslight on or gaslight Ted. Y'all see what I've done?
Now you're trying to gaslight me.
To gas up on like for asking questions about Courtney, like what is Ted, this, that, and the other, blah blah blah. We have to go right into the next episode. The next episode, prediction wise, episode title is called Bad Eggs. What you think is going to be happening in that one?
Oh, geez.
Naj, you shut the fuck up.
See, I hate this because it could be so many things. I feel like, is it insect related or something like those kind of eggs? Is it like eggs that like a chicken hatches, or are we just like using a metaphor again? Like I don't know. It could be anything.
It really could.
A hell chicken.
All right. Well, that's great. Thanks.
That's all I got.
Well, you guys, that was a lot of fun. Naj, where can everyone find you to keep up with you?
Well, I just be posting on YouTube, Naj Reactions. Yeah. Keep it short and sweet.
All right, love it. You guys can catch Naj back here for a future season 2 episode. I'm a breadcrumb, you motherfuckers. But I'm gonna leave you guys wondering which one she'll be back for, but it's gonna be a great one when she does come back. We still have a handful of guests coming in for the remainder of season 2 as well, and it's gonna be great to have the extra company because this has been fun as fuck, and I'm stoked to cover the episodes that we have guests on for because they're great ones. Until then, you guys can find us on our socials and reach out to us. Now's a good time to start emailing and message us also about what's to come this season, because I'm assuming if you've seen the show, you know. So start messaging us some thoughts and letting us know what's going on, what you think of everything that's about to go on, so we can put it in future episodes. All of our amazing episodes are almost here. As always, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Buff, you're lacking evidence. I think maybe we're in Sigmund Freud territory.
He has a point. Separation anxiety, the mother figure being taken away, conflict with the father figure.
He's not my father figure.
Having issues much?
I am not.
You're having parental issues. You're having parental issues.
Xander.
What, Freud would have said the exact same thing. Except he might not have done that little dance.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at @revamped_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release. And if you happen to love abandoned places but prefer them vampire-free, check out Echoes of Elsewhere, an urban exploration podcast, where I interview urban explorers about the eerie spaces they uncover, anything from haunted schools, forgotten mansions, and tunnels that probably don't lead to the hellmouth. From history to mysteries, tips and tricks of the trade, I dive into all things Urbex. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, The Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.